Chapter 5778. The hoodlums didn't know who Linny was, but they were still intimidated by his aura. No one dared to speak. Who dares to tell my people to piss off? Is Songshan going to change? A young man stepped out of the elevator coldly, hearing Lin Yi's words. He smiled coldly as he walked in. Brother Chung. Master Chung. The gangsters greeted Lin Yi excitedly and respectfully as if they'd found their backbone. They looked at Lin Yi as if he was a dead man. Languza laughed at this idiot's pretentious face. Just what level is this guy in? He'll have to ask his boss later. It wasn't that this guy was too strong, it was that he was too weak. Languza wasn't very familiar with the levels below Foundation establishment. After all, there weren't any sea beasts this week. He really didn't know much. Lin Yi, of course, knew that a guy at the peak of the late phase of the Earth class was quite strong in Songshan. But to challenge him like that was a joke. My boss told you to piss off. Why aren't you guys piss off? Languza glared at him and turned to Lin Yi with a smile. Boss, they don't want to piss off. Do you want me to make them piss off one by one? When Languza said piss off, he really meant it. He thought it would be a good game, but Lin Yi didn't agree. Lin Yi looked at young Master Chung indifferently and said without a trace of anger, changing the world? Has Songshan ever changed? Master Chung paused. He didn't quite understand what Lin Yi meant. Was he trying to stand up for Haoso? Let Haoso become the top power in Songshan again? Even if that was the case, wouldn't it still be a change? Lin Yi didn't want to pay attention to this ant-like character. He didn't even want to know who this guy was. The difference was too big. He didn't even have the mood to care. What Lin Yi meant was that the skies of Songshan would always be in his hands. It didn't matter if he was here or not. No matter who was jumping around below. As long as he wasn't dead, the skies wouldn't belong to anyone. This was Lin Yi's base in the common world. Who dared to say they controlled this place? They didn't even know how to write the word death. Master Chung was hesitant. Lin Yi and Languza looked like normal people, but that follower that flew out wasn't something a normal person could do. He suspected that Lin Yi and Languza weren't so simple. Because of that, he didn't dare act rashly. You two, do you know who's in charge of Songshan, right? I, and Jinqing, may only be the second in command, but I'm a man of my words. If you let me have this place today, I'll owe you a favor. Otherwise, the aristocratic families behind us could easily crush a tiny Liang family. And Jinqing thought about it and softened his attitude, but he still made a threat. Get out. Lin Yi didn't have any expression on his face. Which noble house in the common world dared to jump in front of him? He really wanted to see, but this guy's name sounded familiar. And Jinqing? What did he have to do with that idiot Zhang Wen? And Jinqing's face turned cold. He smiled coldly. Don't be so shameless. Do you know who I've invited today? Not to mention in Songshan, even in the whole of China, he's someone who can shake the world with a stomp of his feet. If you dare to delay this young master's business, don't even think about getting away with it. Io, you scared me to death. Languza screamed as if he wanted the world to be in chaos. He smiled weirdly. I have to stomp my foot and shake the world a few times a day. I don't even know when I accidentally let you out. You son of a turtle. You dare come here and scare me? Do you really think I'm scared? Lin Yi was speechless. Languza used to be such a simple and honest sea dragon. How did he become like this all of a sudden? Even if society was a big dive at, he didn't go to society at all. Plus, you're a sea dragon. If you're this son of a turtle's father, then isn't the relationship between families a little too complicated? You're courting death. And Jinqing didn't even say anything. His lackeys couldn't take it anymore. This was the best time to show their loyalty. No one wanted to be left behind. All of them rolled up their sleeves, ready to teach Languza a lesson. Languza got excited. This was the effect he wanted after wasting so much saliva. Boss, please don't stop them. Unfortunately, before these guys could make a move, the elevator that opened again attracted their attention. A young girl with international brands came out. Her makeup was exquisite, and her hair was dyed light blonde. Although her face couldn't be seen clearly because of her large sunglasses, her aura was very strong. Behind her were 4 men and women. They seemed to be her assistant, makeup artist, fashion designer, and bodyguards. It was obvious that they were a team of celebrities. Emily. It's Miss Emily. The lackeys who were about to rush up turned around and saw this girl. They immediately changed their target and looked towards the elevator. If it wasn't for Jianqing, they would have rushed up and surrounded her. Languza looked at the girl named Emily bitterly. His heart was full of resentment. It wasn't easy for this bro to get into a fight. Why did this chick come out and cause trouble? Emily's frosty expression immediately turned radiant when she saw Jianqing. She took off her sunglasses, revealing her exquisite face and beautiful eyes. She walked over with a smile. Young Master Chung, you're here so early. I'm sorry. Am I late? I even said I wanted to familiarize myself with the venue and the environment. I'm really sorry. Young Master Chung, you're a magnanimous person. Please don't hold it against me. And Jianqing temporarily put aside Lin Yi and the others when he saw Emily. He revealed a smile that he thought was handsome. Miss Emily, you're so dedicated. How could you be late? I also came early to see Miss Emily. After all, I'm your fan. It's my honor to be able to invite Miss Emily to sing here. Young Master Chung, you really know how to make people happy. You can call me whenever you want to listen to songs. Emily smiled seductively and winked at Jianqing. She was secretly pleased with herself. Chapter 5779. Isn't young Master Chung going to treat some VIPs today? Why did it look like a wedding? Emily knew that if she was too enthusiastic, Jianqing might not take her seriously. Fishing for a rich man was the same as fishing. She had to know when to stop, so she pretended to change the topic. Jianqing sneered. Some blind people are fighting with me for this place. Don't worry, Emily, this won't affect your performance. Emily turned to look at Lin Yi, her eyes brightening as well. She didn't know who he was, but the aura he exuded was very attractive, and in terms of looks, he was a lot better than Jianqing. Unfortunately, there weren't many rich young masters that she didn't know. The one in front of her was obviously not on the list. Otherwise, she could have befriended him. Since he wasn't a rich young master, Emily wasn't interested in getting to know Lin Yi. She continued to size up the others, and it seemed that Lin Yi was the leader. She could only twist her slender waist as she walked in front of him and raised her chin arrogantly. You're the leader of these people, right? I'd advise you guys to leave before young Master Chung gets angry. Of course, I'll give each of you an autographed photo as compensation, and you can even take a photo with the bride and groom as a blessing. What do you think? Emily said as if she was giving them charity, as if they were the ones who'd taken advantage of her. Lenny frowned. Who are you? If Zhou Ruoming didn't invite you, then get lost. The arrogant Emily was petrified. This bastard actually asked me who I am? Doesn't he know that I, Emily, am a first-rate celebrity in the country? Although I'm still far from being a first-rate celebrity and can't be compared to those kings and queens, there aren't many people in the country who don't know me. Languza came over and whispered, Boss, what's the use of this silly woman's autographed photo? Is it for wiping your ass? Lenny couldn't help but smile. This guy is getting more and more evil, but I like it. AI Mealy's pretty face instantly flushed red. She clenched her fists tightly. The anger in her heart was almost unbearable. Foolish woman? Using an autographed photo to wipe his ass? This bastard was going too far. Emily had never experienced such humiliation ever since she became famous. For a moment, she didn't know how to react. Although Jianqing found Languza's words funny, now was the time for him to show off. He took a step forward and shielded Emily behind him. He pointed at Languza angrily and said, Good boy. If you have the guts, say it again and see how this young master takes care of you. Languza was overjoyed. There was actually such a good thing. He could beat people up after scolding them. This was simply too awesome. Boss, what's the use of this stupid woman's autograph? Is it for wiping your butt? Languza repeated loudly. Then, he looked at Jianqing with anticipation. He thought to himself, hurry up and do it. Hurry up. Otherwise, boss will stop me from beating you up again. AI Mealy was about to go crazy. A big shot like her had been called a stupid woman to her face. Not only did he use her autographed photo to wipe his ass, he even said it twice in a row. 2 times. And Jianqing's eyes turned cold. He swung his hand at Languza's handsome face. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't stop him if he wanted to court death. Languza had been looking forward to this for a long time, and he couldn't wait for Jiancheng to act faster. Unfortunately, just as Jiancheng raised his hand, the elevator doors opened again. The general manager of the Imperial Court Hotel rushed out and shouted, "Young Master Chung, calm down. I'll definitely get this done." This time, it was Languza's turn to go crazy. This damn elevator was too much of a hindrance. Shouldn't he go and dismantle this thing first? There were a total of 4 elevators on the left and right, so it was something that could be easily dismantled. And Jiancheng retracted his hand. To be honest, he was also forced into a corner just now. If he didn't do something, he wouldn't be able to show his face in public in the future. However, if he really had to deal with Lin Yi and Languza himself, he still wasn't confident. If it wasn't for this, with his style of doing things, he would have already asked someone to hack these guys to death when he arrived. Why would he talk nonsense with them for so long? The general manager of the hotel wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and rushed over to Zhou Ruoming. He said, "Mr. Zhou, our Imperial Court Hotel has been booked today, so we'll have to ask you to change the venue for your wedding. If you need, we can help you contact other hotels. What do you think?" When Zhou Ruoming saw Lin Yi, he had already made up his mind and left everything to Lin Yi to handle. However, now that they were talking to him directly, he naturally had to come out and reply. "Is this how your hotel does business? The reservation fee for the Supreme Number 1 private room is 250,000 yuan a day. You should know when I start and when I end the reservation, right? When I didn't use it, you gave the private room to someone else and I didn't ask for the fee back. Now that I want to use it, you give me the same treatment? Do you really think that I, Zhou Ruoming, can be bullied at will?" Zhou Ruoming was also very unhappy. It was okay that Jiancheng looked down on the Zhou family, but how dare a general manager of the Imperial Court Hotel play tricks on him? The sweat on the general manager's forehead increased. He didn't mention the refund on purpose just now because he wanted to fish in troubled waters. He hoped that Zhou Ruoming wouldn't mention it under the pressure of Jiancheng. As Zhou Ruoming had said, he had given the Supreme Number 1 to someone else and cheated Zhou Ruoming of the reservation fee. Now, even if he wanted to refund it, he couldn't. "Mr. Zhou, I can refund the fee for today. Although you had a reservation, the entire Imperial Court Hotel has been booked by Lord Cheng, so your reservation has to be invalid. We can't do anything about it. I hope you can understand." The general manager gritted his teeth. It was fine to refund the fee for today, but it was impossible for him to get the previous one back. Lin Yi raised his hand to stop Zhou Ruoming from talking. He looked at the general manager coldly. "If your Imperial Court Hotel is going to do business like this, then there's no need for it to continue." The general manager was shocked. He felt a chill in his heart, but he still braced himself and said, "Are you kidding me? Who do you think you are? How dare you criticize the management of the Imperial Court Hotel? Leave now. We don't welcome you. Please leave now." Chapter 5780. Originally, Lin Yi wanted to throw him out himself, but seeing how eager Languza was, he couldn't bear to continue pressuring him, so he let him do it. "All right, boss, just wait and see. Don't worry when I, Languza, do it." Before he could finish his sentence, Languza had already grabbed the general manager's tie like a chicken and lifted him up. After thinking for a while, he asked, "Boss, should I throw him out the window or the door?" That fellow's face was pale with fear. After being grabbed by Languza, he could not move at all. He could not even speak. He could not even beg for mercy even if he wanted to, let alone anything else. If he was really thrown out of the window by Languza, it would be good if he was left with a pile of minced meat after falling from such a high floor. Throw him out the door. Lin Yi waved his hand casually. It was fine to kill a small fry like this, but he didn't want to kill easily, so he showed mercy again. "Oh," Languza said. He estimated the strength in his hand, then lightly threw the general manager out. With a whoosh, the general manager flew out and crashed into the door of an elevator, collapsing the alloy door. However, the guy was fine. Languza's strength was transmitted to the elevator door, so his body didn't suffer much. "Nice. I destroyed one." Languza secretly gave himself a thumbs up. Of course, he did it on purpose to destroy an elevator that was always in his way. Unfortunately, There were still 3 elevators left. Languza was already looking at Jianqing and AI Mealy with evil intentions. As for not hitting women, sorry, in the eyes of the aquatic dragon, humans were humans. There was no difference between men and women, and Jianqing looked at Languza with fear. He was glad that he didn't make a move just now. Otherwise, he would definitely be in trouble. This blue-blonde guy was quite strong. Although he couldn't tell his specific level, he was definitely not weaker than in Jianqing. Emily didn't know the severity of the situation. Although the hotel's general manager had caused the elevator door to collapse, in her opinion, it was only because the material of the elevator door wasn't good. Otherwise, the general manager wouldn't have been able to stand up and run away so quickly. This is too presumptuous. Young Master Chung, who are they? How dare they be so arrogant? Do you want me to find someone to deal with them? With my reputation, I don't believe that I can't find someone who can deal with them. Emily gritted her teeth and said, not forgetting to show off her wide network of friends. Before Jianqing could speak, more people came out of the elevator. This time, it was 2 big bosses in the business world. Sensing that the atmosphere wasn't right, they turned around and wanted to leave. However, Jianqing had already noticed them. If they left now, they would most likely offend Jianqing. Young Master Chung and Miss Emily, what's going on? One of them saw that he couldn't leave, so he directly greeted Jianqing. The other was also a smart person. He immediately greeted Jianqing. No matter what, they couldn't afford to offend Jianqing. As for the group that was confronting Jianqing, they wouldn't easily get involved before they understood the situation. Jianqing only nodded. He wasn't even interested in saying anything. These 2 were considered decent people in the business world, but in today's guest list, they were only small characters at the bottom. The 2 elites of the business world were a little embarrassed, but they didn't dare to express their dissatisfaction. They could only stand at the side and pretend to look at the decorations around them. At this time, the other 2 elevators opened one after another. A few more groups of people came in. They were all young people, and they seemed to know each other. As they came out, they laughed and chatted with each other. Brother Chung, you're here so early. Are you here to see Miss Emily? The young man in front laughed and waved at Jianqing. Jianqing finally smiled and said, you're all here and in a group. Are you afraid that people won't know that you're the 5 little dragons of the new aristocratic families? Ha ha ha. What 5 little dragons? With a big dragon like you, Brother Cheng, what are we 5 little dragons? Another man with a strong body laughed and said, these 2 groups of people were led by the 5 second generation of the new aristocratic families. The rest were all their followers. They often hung out together, so they were very familiar with each other. Hey, isn't that Liang Ruoqing from the Liang family? She's getting married here today? One of them who knew Liang Ruoqing said with some surprise. After all, they were all from the new aristocratic families, so they would more or less have some interactions. Brother Chung, didn't you book this place for young Master Han? Why is someone from the Liang family holding a wedding here? The well-built man from before asked in a low voice. Jianqing's face darkened again. He snorted and said, I, and Jianqing, don't have enough face. They snatched the number 1 private room and refused to give it up. This is simply preposterous. The 5 little dragons immediately exploded. They stepped forward with righteous indignation and said, Liang Ruoqing, even your father, Liang Bufan, has to be careful when he sees Brother Chung, let alone a little girl like you. Let us give you a piece of advice. Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, when young Master Han arrives, it will be even more embarrassing for you. Liang Ruoqing's face was a little pale. Although she knew Lin Yi's strength, she was not facing a new aristocratic family, but an alliance of new aristocratic families. She didn't care about it herself, but Liang family was there after all. She didn't want to bring trouble to her family, and that wasn't the result she wanted. Linny smiled faintly and said, Where did these 5 little worms come from? They're really annoying. That's right. Boss, do you want me to throw them out as well? This kind of trash actually dared to call himself a dragon? I'm dying of laughter. Languza revealed a very creepy smile. He clenched his fist and was about to make a move. Even I, a flood dragon, don't dare to call myself a dragon. How dare you weaklings call yourselves the 5 little dragons in front of me? This is simply an insult to the Dragon Clan. Brother Chung, where did these two idiots come from? How dare they act tough in front of us brothers? Even if young Master Han comes, he will have to give us some face. Who the hell are these two? Why don't we cripple this brat first? The 5 little dragons who had been quiet all this while suddenly exploded. It seemed like they liked to scold people. Chapter 5781. If Lin Yi didn't want Languza to make a move, he could naturally stop him. Since he didn't stop him, it meant that he didn't mind him making a move. Lin Yi smiled. Don't hold back if you can't. A bunch of clowns, other than wasting time. There was no other use. Lin Yi didn't want to beat around the bush with them anymore. Languza was overjoyed. He knew that Lin Yi agreed for him to make a move. But at this time, people came out from the damn elevator again. Languza swore that when he left, he would definitely tear these elevators apart. But when he saw that it was Kong Xiaobo and Lai Changyi, Languza calmed down. He couldn't be angry at his own people, right? Boss, we're here. Kong Xiaobo and Lai Changyi walked over neatly and bowed respectfully to greet Lin Yi. Lin Yi found it funny. These two brats did it on purpose, right? They didn't usually have this kind of attitude. At his level, did he still need to act like this? Miracle Dr. Guan Medical Group's Kong Xiaobo and Lai Changyi are here to congratulate Mr. Zhou Ruoming and Ms. Liang Ruoqing for getting married. The hotel arranged for the greeter to hide outside the door and watch the show. But when he saw these two coming personally with gifts and even taking the initiative to greet Lin Yi, he didn't dare to be slow. He immediately raised his head and announced his name. A small figure like him might not be able to come into contact with the 5 little dragons of the noble houses, but the 2 co-directors of Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company, as long as one stayed in Songshan, he or she would know about them. They were the big shots that could shake Songshan with just a stomp of their feet. And Jianqing's expression changed. In Songshan, there was no one who didn't know about Kong Xiaobo and Lai Changyi, and the person behind him had reminded him again and again that he could offend anyone but the Miracle Dr. Guan Medical Group. Otherwise, no one could save him. He didn't expect these two to come personally. He never heard of Zhou Ruoming interacting with them before. Wait, Kong Xiaobo and Lai Changyi called that pretentious brat boss? And Jianqing suddenly realized that he had overlooked too many things. At this moment, there was even some fear in his eyes. Zhou Ruoming, why didn't you inform us that you're getting married? We're schoolmates after all. Kong Xiaobo received Lin Yi's call and came to support Zhou Ruoming. So after greeting Lin Yi, he went over to hug Zhou Ruoming enthusiastically. Ruoming, naturally, knew that the two had come for Lin Yi's sake, but he was still very happy. And Jianqing's people were coming in waves, and Ruoming's side was getting weaker and weaker. Even if Lin Yi could take on all of them, it still wasn't enough. Now with these 2 underlings of Lin Yi, the atmosphere was completely different. The guy who was slapped by Languza didn't suffer any serious injuries. At this moment, he walked over with his teeth bared and roared at his underlings, "Are you all dead? Don't you have any reaction when you see this young master being hit?" Before he could finish speaking, Languza's figure flashed, and he had already appeared in the middle of his followers like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, these fellows had all been knocked down by him. Moreover, he had piled them up like a human pyramid. Now it's much more spacious. Languza clapped his hands in satisfaction. Then he suddenly thought of something and asked the guy, "By the way, how do you want them to react? I'll help you see if they can still do it." And Jianqing and his underlings were completely dumbfounded. At first, they thought that Languza was quite strong, but they didn't experience it firsthand. Now, they finally understood that this wasn't someone they could fight against. No matter how powerful they were, in front of this kind of strength, they were nothing. Plus, and Jianqing already knew about Lin Yi's identity. The one behind him had warned him before, and now that they were facing each other directly, he didn't know what to do. The 2 people who came after Maid and Jianqing completely confirmed Lin Yi's identity. The 2 superstars of China, absolute empress level, Su Shihan and Cheng Yi. When the 2 beauties walked out of the elevator, the 5 little dragons on Jiang Wen's side all shrunk their heads and willingly turned into little insects. They couldn't help it. These 2 might be superstars to ordinary people, but as young masters of noble houses, if they didn't know their real identities, they would have died 100 times already. Emily saw Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi and quickly went up and nodded with a face full of smiles. Shirhan sis, sis. Su Shirhan nodded with a smile, but Cheng Yi said coldly, "Who are you?" Ai Meili's face instantly turned red. She was, after all, an A-list celebrity, yet Cheng Yi asked her who she was? This was too much of a slap to her face. The problem was that she didn't dare to get angry. A first-tier celebrity might sound powerful, but compared to a superstar like Cheng Yi, an international empress, there was no comparison at all. Not to mention Cheng Yi's terrifying background, just the disparity in status between the two of them was enough. As long as Cheng Yi said that she wanted to ban Emily, an A-list celebrity like her would immediately fade into the crowd. It was guaranteed that there would not be any ripples. Sis, I'm Emily. We met at this year's China Golden Melody Awards. Emily was going crazy, but she had to smile and talk. I don't remember, Cheng Yi said straightforwardly. Then, she pulled her to the side. If it was another occasion, Cheng Yi might communicate with her. After all, they were in the same circle. It wasn't a bad thing to help the younger generation. But since Emily was here to fight against Lin Yi, Cheng Yi was already giving her a lot of face by not beating her up. There was no way Cheng Yi was going to be nice to her. Lin Yi, why didn't you call us when you came to attend your friend's wedding? Sister Shirhan and I prepared a song to congratulate the newlyweds. This must be the bride and groom, right? They are indeed a perfect match. Cheng Yi's expression had changed completely as she walked towards Lin Yi. That smile on her face made Emily's teeth itch even more. When Zhou Ruoming heard Cheng Yi's praise, he couldn't help but blush. Liang Ruoqing was a beautiful woman. As for being a perfect match, to a 10,000-year repeat student like him, wasn't that insulting? Emily remembered how arrogant she'd been in front of Linny before, thinking that he was just a pretty boy. Her intestines turned green with regret. This bastard was so damn annoying. He was so powerful, but he pretended to be a loser. Would he die if he didn't act cool? Oh. Chapter 5782. If Linny knew what she was thinking, he'd be speechless. He was a natural tall, rich, and handsome man. When had he ever pretended to be a loser? When Sun Jingyi came over, and Jiancheng was already numb. Since he was sure that it was Lin Yi, then he should be thinking about how to keep his life, and not fight for that damned Supreme Room 1. The 5 dragons didn't know who Lin Yi was, but there was no way they wouldn't know Sun Jingyi. She was the leader of a noble house that was even higher than theirs. Wouldn't they be looking for death if they didn't know her? Yet, this powerful woman was the same as the 2 superstars, Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi, walking to Lin Yi with a smile on her face. She didn't even glance at them, only talking to Lin Yi and congratulating the bride and groom. What put them in a difficult position was that the ones following behind Sun Jingyi were the legendary Hidden House Yu Bing, Hidden House Shuang Niaoqiang, and Hidden House Pai's Pai Zhihai. They didn't dare to look at them anymore, and just kneeled on the ground with their followers, waiting for their punishment. Lin Yi didn't have time to care about them, and told Zhou Ruoming to get everyone to sit down, so that they wouldn't block the door. All the famous people that Jianqing had invited, other than the 5 dragons, immediately became guests of Zhou Ruoming's wedding after seeing this situation. It was impossible for someone to get to this level without good eyesight. And Jianqing stood in front of the 5 dragons with a dazed look. Because they were all kneeling, he stood out. Lin Yi was still there, and he didn't dare to sneak away. When the elevator opened again, and Jianqing's eyes finally lit up when he saw who it was, he quickly greeted, "Master Han, you're here." Young Master Han was the big shot that Jianqing was going to invite to the banquet today. However, after knowing Lin Yi's identity, he knew that he was an idiot. Now, his only hope was that young Master Han could put in a good word for him so that he wouldn't be killed by Lin Yi. Lin Yi's eyes flashed. He didn't think that the young Master Han and Jianqing mentioned was Han Xiaopa. This brat came to Songshan to see Lin Yi, but why was he with Jianqing? Boss. Han Xiaopa ignored Jianqing and walked up to Lin Yi with a guilty look on his face. Obviously, he had heard what happened here. Lin Yi had only told Kang Xiaobo to find some powerful people to support Zhou Ruoming, so that he could live a more comfortable life in Songshan. He didn't think that this brat would find all the noble houses in Songshan, and naturally, Han Xiaopa was on the list that Kong Xiaobo notified. Han Xiaopa, it seems like you're doing quite well now, Linny said faintly, still feeling a little uncomfortable. And Jianqing knew that this was related to Jiang Wen. There was no way that Han Xiaopa didn't know that Lin Yi and Jiang Wen were enemies. Jiang Wen was one of the main leaders of this incident, too. If Han Xiaopa and Jianqing had a good deal, Lin Yi would definitely have some thoughts about it. Boss, let me explain. Han Xiaopa shook his head with a bitter smile and said sincerely, Boss, House Han is where we are today because of you, boss. If it weren't for you, House Han would have been taken over by the other hidden houses a long time ago. No matter what, Xiaopa would never do anything that would betray you, boss. Please believe me on this, boss. Linny didn't say anything, but he felt much calmer inside. If Han Xiaopa really wanted to work with Jiang Wen and the center, he would only be disappointed. House Han alone wasn't enough to change the situation, but for his follower, Han Xiaopa, Lin Yi really didn't want him to go down the wrong path. Since Han Xiaopa had something to say, Lin Yi would listen to him. Boss, this Jianqing has a lot of rare treasures in his hands. You can't find anything better than what he has. So if this new house wants to establish itself in Songshan, I have to give them some face. After all, only the An Central Group has those treasures. Of course, I've also warned him not to touch anyone related to Boss, or I'll be the first to deal with him. Han Xiaopa explained simply and logically, and Lin Yi understood what he meant. This An Central Group was built by Jiang Wen using the center's resources, and Jianqing was his spokesperson. This guy really was like a ghost that wouldn't go away, running into him wherever he went. But Lin Yi didn't find it strange. After all, the center's second base was in the outskirts of Songshan, and it was normal for the An Central Group to use Songshan as a base. With the wormhole, the center could send technology from the common world to Sky-class Island, leading a technological revolution. Of course, they could also send things from Sky-class Island to the common world. Even some broken herbs were top-notch treasures in the common world, and this was a monopoly. Jiang Wen wouldn't be Jiang Wen if he didn't take advantage of this opportunity to get rich. Lin Yi nodded, I understand. I'll let it go this time. Be careful when you interact with the people from the center in the future. This isn't something you should be doing. I understand, boss. I'll be careful in the future. Han Xiaopa sighed in relief and bowed. Compared to Lin Yi, nothing else mattered. No matter how many treasures the An Central Group had, Han Xiaopa wouldn't work with them anymore. Luckily, he wasn't too involved this time, or it'd be hard for him to get out of this. Lin Yi looked at Jianqing faintly. Did you send a message to Jiang Wen? When is he coming? And Jianqing was startled. He thought that he'd done it discreetly enough, but Lin Yi still found him. Lin Yi, since you know that when bro is coming, you should restrain yourself a little. Don't think that I'm afraid of you. And Jianqing didn't bother hiding anymore since he was found out. He roared in a low voice. When Jiang Wen mentioned Lin Yi to him, he did warn him not to mess with Lin Yi, but when it came to him and Lin Yi, he naturally wouldn't say that he was afraid of Lin Yi. The result of this was that Jianqing thought that his when bro was afraid of Lin Yi, but in reality, he had Lin Yi in his hands. Because of this, he didn't hesitate to call Jiang Wen for help when Han Xiaopa completely gave up on him. Chapter 5783. Lin Yi frowned slightly and flicked 2 strands of pure energy at Jianqing's knees, forcing him to kneel with the 5 dragons. You talk too much. Kneel first and let Jiang Wen come and get them. Lin Yi said faintly before turning to Han Xiaopa. Xiaopa, you go in and sit first. We'll talk later. Boss, aren't you going in? Why don't I stay here with you? It's rare for me to see you, boss, so it'll be good to talk more. Han Xiaopa said with a smile. Lin Yi didn't blame him, which made him relax and feel better. Lin Yi shrugged. Forget it then. Let's go in and sit together. I wanted to wait for Jiang Wen to come so he wouldn't ruin the atmosphere, but this guy isn't worth it. Let's go in first. Languza had wanted to go in and eat for a long time. These guys were all soft-footed shrimps, begging for mercy on the ground. Since they couldn't fight, of course they had to eat as much as they could. But before going in, he didn't forget to threaten them with a glare. Kneel properly. If anyone dares to walk away, I'll destroy your entire family. This was, of course, just a casual remark. Even if Languza wanted to do so, Lin Yi wouldn't allow him to do so. But the 5 dragons didn't know that. Seeing how fierce Languza was, they immediately nodded, indicating that they wouldn't leave. Languza nodded in satisfaction and followed behind Lin Yi. Then, he realized that he couldn't keep up with Lin Yi anymore. The moment he entered, Lin Yi was like the moon surrounded by stars. Many people wanted to get to know Lin Yi, and if he didn't use some pure energy, he couldn't separate them at all. Lin Yi brushed them off twice and got impatient. He released his pure energy to block the people outside and walked in on his own. Hey, this guy is quite fast, Lin Yi said to himself as he walked in. He turned around and walked out. His soul had already sensed that Jiang Wen had arrived at the hotel's rooftop. With the speed of the flying saucer, it wasn't strange for him to arrive so quickly. Ah Chung, why are you kneeling here? Who's *king tired of living, daring to touch our clan's people? And Jiang Wen was enraged when he saw Jiansheng kneeling on the ground. With a wave of his hand, the 10 biohumans behind him blocked the entrance of the room. Without waiting for Jiansheng to speak, Lin Yi leisurely walked out and lightly said, I'm the one who touched your family. What are you going to do about it? Jiang Wen shuddered. Lin Yi's voice was like a nightmare to him. The center had just signed a truce with Lin Yi, but that didn't guarantee that Lin Yi wouldn't kill him. Lin Yi, you're *king tired of living. How dare you touch our clan's people? Jiang Wen roared suddenly and raised his leg to kick in Jiansheng's face. He yelled even louder. If you want to *king hit him, then hit him seriously. What's the point of making him kneel? Do it like this, understand? Don't give me face in the future. You can just kill a bastard like him. The 5 dragons behind Jiansheng almost fainted when they saw Jiang Wen kicking and punching Jiansheng. What the hell was with this line? Weren't you Jiansheng's brother? Lin Yi was speechless. So making Jiansheng kneel was giving you face? He'd finally seen what it meant to be a despicable person. All right, stop acting here. Tell me why you're here, okay? You're not here to beat up your brother, are you? Lin Yi looked at Jiang Wen with a smile that wasn't a smile on his face. They just signed an agreement, but it wouldn't be bad to beat him up if he had the chance. Jiang Wen glanced at the room and said decisively, Isn't there a wedding here? I'm here to give the gift. Yes, I'm here to give the gift. Beating this kid up is just a convenience. Gift? That's not bad. You're considerate. I wonder how much money you're giving? Lin Yi smiled faintly as he looked at Jiang Wen meaningfully. Jiang Wen smiled dryly. I came out in a hurry, so I didn't bring much cash. I'm just here to show my sincerity. 100 million, right? It's a little, but I can't really look down on the groom's behalf. I'll reluctantly accept it for him. Lin Yi's lips twitched as he reached out his hand and hooked his finger at Jiang Wen, signaling him to hurry up and hand over the money. Jiang Wen almost coughed up blood. He only wanted to give 1 million. All right? 100 million was a little, not feeling down on the groom's behalf, and reluctantly accepted it? Do you think I'm a sucker? If saliva could drown Lin Yi, Jiang Wen would have spat it all over his face. Unfortunately, Jiang Wen, who was used to being extorted, didn't even have the courage to think about bargaining with Lin Yi. He was afraid that 100 million would turn into 1 billion, and that'd be a huge loss. Give me your account number. I'll transfer the money. Jiang Wen held his breath. He'd already given Zhou Ruoming's father-in-law a huge sum of money, so he didn't mind giving Zhou Ruoming some more. He just treated his pity for Zhou Ruoming and Liang Ruoqing, taking care of their dowry and betrothal gifts. Languza, who was eating his steak, got close to Lin Yi and said, Boss, this guy must have earned a lot of dirty money. He should have asked for more. Jiang Wen really wanted to choke Languza to death. This bastard couldn't even eat properly. What the hell was he talking about? Lin Yi knew that Jiang Wen must have earned a lot of money from those useless herbs on Sky-class Island, and he could easily sell them for a few 100,000. But he knew when to stop and didn't continue squeezing Jiang Wen dry. There'd be chances in the future, after all. Lin Yi really did have Zhou Ruoming's account number. He didn't know why he'd brought it last time, but he could use it now. Jiang Wen didn't want to stay any longer. He transferred the money and prepared to leave with Jiansheng. Lin Yi smiled. Jiang Wen, you came with the gifts. Why didn't Zhaolong and Xue Jianfeng come? Don't tell me your title of Commander-in-Chief is just an empty title? Your subordinates don't even know how to follow you. Linny, that's enough. Jangwon was on the verge of crying. Wasn't he the one paying for the two guys? Linny said expressionlessly. What do you mean that's enough? You better give me an explanation today, or you won't be leaving. Jangwon wanted to slap himself on the face. What the hell was he talking about? What the hell was he talking about? Chapter 5784. Letting the two of them bleed a little was better than losing Jangwon's alone. It was better to have everyone happy than to be happy alone. After thinking it through, Jangwon didn't wait for Lin Yi to rush him. He took out his phone and called Xiaolong and Xue Jianfeng. He didn't say anything else, but just told them to come to the Imperial Hotel's room 1. He had something important to discuss, and Jiansheng really wanted to die when he saw this. It was one thing to get punched and kicked by Jangwon, but the person he relied on the most was gone. It was as if the sky was falling down on him. After a while, Xiaolong and Xue Jianfeng really did come over like idiots. Before Lin Yi even said anything, Jangwon said that he'd come with 100 million and it was up to them. What else could they do with Lin Yi here? They could only pinch their noses and accept the gift. After sending them away, Lin Yi didn't want to waste any more time. He went on stage and clapped his hands. All right, today is Mr. Zhou Ruoming and Miss Liang Ruoqing's wedding. Most of the relatives and friends are here. I'm Lin Yi, the host of the wedding. I actually don't know what a host is for, because I've never been married before. Kind laughter came from the audience. Who didn't know who Lin Yi was? To be able to see him officiate a wedding, it was a worthwhile trip. Lin Yi's forehead was starting to sweat. What the hell was this wedding officiator? It was even more tiring than fighting with the giants of the opening period. Speaking of which, didn't that guy have a sense of humor at all? Wasn't it a little too stiff? God knew that Lin Yi had never thought about something like this in his entire life. He swore to himself that he'd never be a goddamn wedding host ever again. In actuality, Zhou Ruoming had hired a professional host. Lin Yi didn't need to go on stage to steal his job, but since he was already there, Zhou Ruoming wouldn't be stupid enough to let him come down. He could only continue to be a host. Fortunately, Lin Yi reluctantly carried on with the wedding. To Zhou Ruoming and Liang Ruoqing, this wasn't important. What was important was that Lin Yi really treated them as friends. Otherwise, with Lin Yi's status, why would he do something like this? Moreover, he had invited so many prominent people to support him. Zhou Ruoming wouldn't believe that they came because of the Zhou family. Even when the Zhou family was at its peak, they were nothing in the eyes of these people, let alone now. But after today, perhaps the Zhou family would rise again. Lin Yi had arranged such a big event. Even if the brothers Zhou Ruoming and Zhou Ruoguang didn't want to control the underground world of Songshan, they would definitely become a powerful family. When countless fireworks rose from the rooftop of the Huangting Hotel, this simple but grand wedding was officially over. Lin Yi, who had fulfilled his promise, could go back in peace. 2 days later, Han Jingjing finally organized the information about the wormhole. She had a general idea of it. Lin Yi Gij, I think I understand now. The research on the wormhole isn't progressing much. The known method of teleportation is to convert the structure of an object into data, then disassemble the object into its smallest particles and teleport it to the other side of the wormhole. Then, according to the data of the structure, the object can be perfectly reconstructed and restored to its original form. Unfortunately, the research center has only found this method so far. It's impossible to teleport a living body. Lin Yi also thought it was a pity. If they could teleport a living body, then they wouldn't need to project their primordial spirit. They could teleport directly, and the people in the secular world could also enter Heavenly Island through the wormhole. But Lin Yi didn't dwell on this too much. It was already amazing enough that they could teleport objects. At least they wouldn't have to worry about communication in the future. At the same time, Lin Yi also understood why the center clearly had the ability to connect the two planes. But there were no people coming and going. There were only a few people in the secular world, and they could only endure when Lin Yi came to bully them. Otherwise, the reinforcements from Heavenly Island would have arrived long ago. Lin Yi Gij, I reckon that this wormhole was discovered by the people from the center on Heavenly Island, and it was only discovered before the rise of the Central Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a large number of things from the secular world to appear during that period of time. The secular world didn't have any powerful methods to improve their cultivation before, and they only recently cultivated experts. Han Jingjing speculated, but it was already very close to the truth. Since you know the situation of this wormhole, let's go back first. I've been away from Heavenly Island for too long. It's time to go back. Linny was really eager to go back. In the past, there had been all kinds of things that had been dragged on, and it was already time for him to settle them. Han Jingjing agreed. At this stage, the wormhole was just a useless thing. It didn't have much meaning if it couldn't teleport living things. However, it was better to make use of it when she could. Han Jingjing had already prepared a purchase list. She would find someone to send it to Big Brother Dafeng later and ask him to help her teleport the things to Heavenly Island. Most of the things on this list were things that Han Jingjing needed, including all kinds of specialized electronic equipment and components, so that she could continue her research on the Heaven Step Island. The other half were all kinds of food and technological products from the secular world. These were gifts for people. Things from the secular world were very popular on the Heaven Step Island. With these latest models, Han Jingjing could make more and more powerful equipment, and it would be more efficient to study the wormhole. If there was anything she lacked, she could directly ask Big Brother Dafeng to continue to help her purchase it. This way, with the support of an endless supply of materials, Han Jingjing could do anything with half the effort. She would no longer have to worry about the lack of technological materials. Well, there's no need to say goodbye. I've said enough in the past 2 days. Linny said to the people gathered in the villa with a smile. Linny had already given them the cultivation resources that should be given to them, whether it was medicinal pills, spirit jades, or star ink milk. Perhaps when he came back next time, the people here would already be in the gold core stage. As for the nascent soul stage and the gold core, they wouldn't need it. Linny, how long will it take for you to come back this time? Sun Jingyi asked with some reluctance. Although the two had said goodbye in private, when Linny really left, she still couldn't let go. Chapter 5785. Linny smiled faintly. I'll definitely come back within a year. If I can find that cheap master of mine, Zhang Liju, I might be able to come back even earlier. A year, of course, referred to the agreement with the center. At this time, everyone was actually blaming Lan Xiuru in their hearts. Why couldn't she set a shorter time for the agreement, like signing it once a month or something like that? If Linny knew what they were thinking, he wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. He definitely wouldn't sign a 1-month agreement. If he had the time, he might as well just go against them. Boss, I'll definitely protect my brothers and sisters-in-law. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I won't let anything happen to them. Don't worry, boss. Chun Dongqing patted his chest and said loudly. Originally, he had always called Lin Yi Grandmaster, but this way, everyone in the common world would be at the same level as his Grandmaster. This seniority was too pitiful, so Lin Yi just let him call him Grandmaster like Languza. Chun Dongqing, of course, was overjoyed. Although he was older than the others, going from the grandson generation to the younger brother generation was nothing to be unhappy about. Calling them brothers and sisters-in-law was no problem at all. Linny nodded to Chen Dongqing. You'll have to worry about this. The next time I come back, I'll make your strength increase even more. Also, the thing I gave you, you must be careful. If you meet Shui Jianfeng, if you can't suppress him, you'll have to rely on this. Yes, boss. I understand. Chun Dongqing nodded respectfully. The thing Linny was talking about was a killing aura of the 5 elements that he had condensed. He used the method of condensing chi bombs to preserve it for Chan Dongqing to use as a trump card against Shui Jianfeng. However, this thing was very unstable. Lin Yi only dared to condense a small amount of 5 elemental killing chi to prevent it from exploding before he could use it. In any case, he just needed to catch Shui Jianfeng off guard and control him. Then Jingjing and Big Brother Lin Yi will be leaving. I think we will meet again very soon. So, just pretend that we are going to an island for a vacation, and we will see each other again when we come back. Am I right? All right, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. Han Jingjing smiled and waved at everyone. Then, She and Lin Yi transformed into their primordial spirits and activated the teleportation back to Heaven Island. Lin Yi was originally holding Han Jingjing's hand, but after transforming into a primordial spirit, he naturally couldn't continue to hold onto her hand. Both of their primordial spirits were compressed and condensed to the extreme, instantly penetrating the barrier of the plane. After a violent dizziness, Lin Yi felt his body sink slightly. Obviously, his primordial spirit had returned. Because he was used to the state of the primordial spirit body, he still felt a little uncomfortable after returning to his body. The first thing Lin Yi did when he regained consciousness was to scan the area with his divine sense. It had become his instinct, and many times, this small action could save his life. Of course, the place where he was now was absolutely safe. The Tiandan Pavilion was an industry that he built himself. Not to mention that this was Middle Island. Whether it was the will of Heaven or Okuda, they were all big shots of Middle Island. Tianchan, I'm back. Lin Yi didn't open his eyes. The corners of his mouth slightly hooked up as he said softly. Tianchan, who was sitting on the side with her elbows on the coffee table and her palms supporting her chin, staring at Lin Yi, was suddenly shocked. She couldn't believe it and widened her eyes, for fear that this was an illusion caused by missing him too much. But the faint smile at the corner of Lin Yi's mouth made Tianchan know that this really didn't seem to be an illusion. Lin Yi, you bad thing. Are you really coming back? Hurry up and open your eyes. If you dare to lie to me, be careful that I kick you. Tianchan suddenly rushed to the bedside and wanted to reach out and touch Lin Yi, but she was afraid that she would disturb him. For a time, she could only speak in confusion. Lin Yi's faint smile became more and more obvious, and his eyes slowly opened. The deep pupils exuded warm longing. I just came back and you want to kick me. To be honest, when I was away, did you come to kick me every day? Lin Yi opened his legs, walked down from the bed, and said with a smile. There was a burst of crisp cracking sounds like beans being fried. His body, which hadn't moved for a long time, suddenly surged with an indescribable feeling of comfort. Tianchan's pretty face was slightly red. She snorted and said, Yeah, I came to kick you for no reason. Who told you to go away for so long and not come back? Lin Yi just smiled and didn't speak. Of course, Tianchan was joking. She didn't have enough time to care about Lin Yi every day. How could she come to kick him for no reason? His divine sense entered the space of the jade pendant to take a look. Languza was really fine. Lin Yi was also relieved, but he didn't plan to release Languza for the time being. After all, things like the space of the jade pendant, it was fine if Tianchan and the others knew, but if it was known by others, it would be very troublesome. On the heavenly stage island, Lin Yi's strength at the peak of the profound ascension late stage was far from being powerful. When he came back after going out to sea next time, the origin of Languza could be rationalized. In addition, Zhao Yazi really disappeared again. Fortunately, Lin Yi chatted with him for a long time before he left. The next time he went to the secular world, there shouldn't be any unhappiness, right? In contrast, the ghost Azure Dragon's spirit showed signs of awakening. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. When there was time, Lin Yi would have a good chat with him. While Lin Yi was in a daze, Tianchan pulled the rope of the bell below. Although she wanted to spend more time with Lin Yi alone, Sydney was worried about Lin Yi just like her. As a good sister, she must inform Sydney as soon as possible. Hearing the bell ring, Sydney, who was busy downstairs, hurried up. She was still thinking that the last time the bell rang, it was Lin Yi who had resumed his cultivation state. Did he wake up this time? When she saw Lin Yi standing there with a smile, she knew that she guessed right, but she didn't know what to do for a while. She could only stand at the door and smile happily. Sydney, what are you standing there for? As a little wife, seeing that her husband woke up, shouldn't you come and serve him quickly? Tianchan smiled mischievously. When Lin Yi came back, it seemed that everything became better. She was also in the mood to joke with her good sister. Chapter 5786. Lin Yi is back? Lin Yi, little junior brother. Shanghai Laner rushed in. She had been accompanying Han Jingjing's body next door. When she heard movement here, she immediately ran over. Laner, you are also here. Lin Yi greeted her with a smile. Then he pulled Sydney in and said, "Sit down and talk. I haven't been back for a long time. There are a lot of things I don't know. Tell me about it." Shanghai Laner was originally in high spirits. Suddenly, she was startled and said, "Hey, Lin Yi, Jingjing didn't come back with you? How come she hasn't woken up yet?" Lin Yi also felt a little strange. His divine sense had already discovered that Han Jingjing was next door. She was still in a cultivation posture. Obviously, her primordial spirit hadn't returned. Perhaps because his primordial spirit was stronger, he woke up first. That's why he didn't say anything. Now that Shanghai Laner mentioned it, Lin Yi felt that something was wrong. The return of the projected primordial spirit shouldn't have much to do with the strength of the primordial spirit. He had been awake for a while. Why hadn't Han Jingjing woken up yet? I'll go see Jingjing. She came back with me. She should be able to wake up soon, Lin Yi said with some uncertainty. Then he quickly walked next door. Shanghai Laner, Tian Chan, and Sydney hurriedly followed. When they heard that Han Jingjing came back with Lin Yi, they couldn't help but worry in their hearts. Not to mention that Han Jingjing had a good relationship with them. Just the fact that she risked her primordial spirit to save Lin Yi was enough to make these sisters admire her. Now, they certainly didn't want anything to happen to Han Jingjing. In a flash, the four arrived at Han Jingjing's room. Lin Yi frowned slightly. He used his divine sense to sense Han Jingjing's sea of consciousness. There was no trace of her primordial spirit. It seemed that she hadn't returned. What happened? They had clearly returned together. So why was Jingjing like this? Where did her primordial spirit go? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Even if Han Jingjing's speed was slower, she should have returned by now. Could it be that something went wrong in the process of teleporting back? If Han Jingjing had projected normally before, Lin Yi wouldn't have been so worried. However, she had used some tricks to deceive the projection, so it wasn't surprising that something went wrong when she came back. Because of this, Lin Yi became more and more worried. "Lin Yi, what's going on? Why didn't Jingjing wake up? Is there a problem?" Shanghai Laner was a little anxious. Her relationship with Han Jingjing was very good. After all, they had been together for a period of time. Han Jingjing's position in her heart was no different from Ning Xuefei's. Lin Yi was also very worried, but he didn't dare show it. He could only force himself to calm down and say, "There's no problem. Jingjing might be weaker than me, so it will take longer for her to return. You don't have to worry, she will wake up soon." Shanghai Laner looked at Lin Yi with some doubt. However, since he didn't seem to have lied to Miss Shanghai before, she finally believed what Lin Yi said. Tian Chan also said, "Jingjing will be fine. Look, she is still in a cultivation posture. If something happened, she will be like Lin Yi last time and directly lie down." This explanation was obviously more convincing. Shanghai Lan heaved a sigh of relief and said, "That's right. Sister Tianchan is right. If something had happened to Jingjing, she would have been lying down by now." Speaking of this, Shanghai Laner turned to ask Lin Yi, "Lin Yi, what happened to you in the secular world? Why did Jingjing have to run to save you?" Lin Yi wasn't too sure when he'd laid down and sat up, but he could roughly guess that when he'd fallen into unconsciousness, his main body had fallen into unconsciousness as well, and when he woke up, he'd be able to sit up and maintain his training posture. Speaking of which, his main body was already at the peak of the profound ascension late stage. It seemed that the upgrade of the spirit could really lead to the upgrade of the physical body. Unfortunately, the divine knowledge fruit was no longer useful to the current Lin Yi. When refining the divine knowledge tumor, the residual energy of the divine knowledge fruit accumulated in the tumor was far more than a normal divine knowledge fruit. Coupled with the energy formed by the refined divine knowledge tumor, it was normal for Lin Yi's spirit to be pushed to the profound ascension great perfection. But in the end, it only advanced by one level and stopped at the peak of the profound ascension late stage. From then on, Lin Yi knew that the divine knowledge fruit was not unlimited to improve the level of the spirit. Even if he ate all the remaining divine knowledge fruits, it was estimated that his spirit could not continue to advance. Seeing Shanghai Laner's curious expression, Lin Yi could only shrug and say, "It's a long story. Don't worry about it now. I will slowly tell you the details after I went to the secular world." Do you want to call Big Brother and Okuda Island Master over to listen together? Tian-chan also wanted to know what happened to Lin Yi, but she understood Lin Yi's thoughts. Since he was back, it was reasonable for him to inform the will of heaven and Okuda Island. Moreover, Han Jingjing had not woken up, so he had to ask the two of them. Tian-chan knew very well that this matter was definitely not so simple. She only mentioned it to reassure Shanghai Laner. Linny nodded and said, "Yes, I really want to talk to these two brothers. When I went to the secular world this time, I found a place that seems to have a lot to do with the Heaven Stage Island. If I ask them, I may be able to find some clues." "That's good. I will immediately invite the two of them over." Tian-chan did not ask much and immediately arranged for people to invite the will of heaven and Okuda Island. Shanghai Laner was very curious and asked all sorts of questions. She was not very interested in places related to the Heaven Stage Island, but she was especially interested in things related to the secular world. When she was with Han Jingjing before, Shanghai Laner asked a lot about these things, but she still could not get tired of listening. Now that Linny was here, the effect was naturally better. In order to divert Shanghai Laner's worry about Han Jingjing, Lin Yi did not refuse. He randomly picked some interesting things about the secular world and told her. Sure enough, she listened with great interest. Even Sydney, a person from the secular world, was the same. After all, she grew up in the Snow Valley. When it came to matters of the secular world, she really did not know much more than Shanghai Laner. Chapter 5787. Soon, the will of heaven and Okuda arrived together. Although it was a bit inappropriate to continue staying in Han Jingjing's room, Linny had no choice but to let them meet here in order to ask about her condition. "Brother Okuda, Big Brother Tian, you are here." Seeing the two of them enter, Linny stood up and cupped his fists to greet them. He knew that it was all thanks to them taking care of him. Otherwise, the Heavenly Dan Pavilion might not be able to maintain such a stable situation. "It's good that Lin brothers are back. We were very worried." Okuda laughed and quickly stepped forward, shaking hands with Lin Yi. Previously, Okuda wanted to befriend Lin Yi, and this time, he did not dare to be negligent. There was not a second person on Heaven Stage Island who could project their soul into the secular world for so long. Moreover, during the process of soul projection, their body actually continuously leveled up, which was even more shocking. Okuda, of course, wanted to befriend Lin even more. The will of heaven did not say much, just smiled and greeted Linny with a nod. With their relationship, it was not an exaggeration to say that they were friends of life and death, so there was no need to stand on ceremony. These days, thanks to Brother Okuda and Big Brother Tian for taking care of me, we are all on the same side, so there is no need to say those polite words. Linny invited the two to sit down and said with a smile, Yes, that's right. We are all brothers. There is no point in being polite." Okuda said with a hearty smile, but in his heart, he was also secretly happy. If Linny said that, then he really regarded him as one of his own, and his help for such a long time was not in vain. The will of heaven waved his hand and said, "Those words really do not need to be said. What is the matter with Sister Jingjing? Why is she still not awake?" For this girl who dared to use a soft armor to try soul projection, the will of heaven was very appreciative, so he opened his mouth to ask. Okuda also asked, "Hey, didn't she take the initiative to stay in the secular world and not come back? If she came back with you, why hasn't she woken up yet?" Lin Yi's heart sank. Okuda's words made his bad feeling more obvious. It seemed that there was really something wrong with Han Jingjing, but he did not know if there was a way to make up for it. Shangguan Laner, Tian-chan, and Sydney all showed a worried look. Okuda was a shrewd person, so he immediately understood that he had said something wrong, so he laughed and said, "It seems that Sister Jingjing's sense of direction is not very good. She should be lost on her way back, but after a while, her soul will return to her body." As soon as Linny heard this, he knew that Okuda was talking nonsense to comfort the three women, but he would not be stupid to ask about this matter. It was better to wait for this matter to be privately inquired from Okuda, but looking at Okuda's appearance, he seemed to have little understanding of this situation. Although Shanghai Laner and the others did not fully believe Okuda, they were slightly relieved. Linny took the opportunity to change the topic. By the way, two elder brothers. This time when I went to the secular world, I accidentally found another plane. That place is called the immemorial small world. Although the spiritual chi is not as abundant as the heavenly stage island, it is still quite good. Before I went there, the highest cultivation level there was the Yuanian Great Perfection, and only the profound ascension sea beast royal family can reach it. Oh, there is such a place? I have never heard of it. Okuda looked very interested, but in fact, he did not care too much in his heart. This was completely to cooperate with Lin Yi to downplay the previous topic. The same was true of the Will of Heaven, a place where the highest cultivation level could only reach the Yuanian Great Perfection. It was just a low-level cultivation plane, nothing worth paying attention to. Although the strength of the immemorial small world was much stronger than the secular world, for them, there was not much difference between the immemorial small world and the secular world. Linny smiled faintly. There is nothing strange about the immemorial small world. The strange thing is that the power structure of this immemorial small world is actually similar to our heavenly stage island. What do you mean by the power structure is similar? Okuda was startled and asked with some doubts. Let me put it this way. When I entered the immemorial small world, I became the Grand Master of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island is one of the sects of the North Island Alliance. The other two are the Soaring Sky sect of the North Island and the Xuanji sect of the North Island. Lin Yi smiled faintly, stretched out his palm, and bent 3 fingers in a row. Shanghai Laner was attracted by the names of these 3 sections. She was the granddaughter of the master of the Soaring Sky sect, Shanghai Tianhua. It would be strange if she did not pay attention to these 3 sects when she suddenly heard of these 3 sections. Linny, is what you said true? Shanghai Laner could not help but ask, her big eyes blinking a few times. Linny nodded and said, of course it is true. When I first heard about the 3 sects of the North Island Alliance, I also felt that it was incredible. No, I'm saying that when you go there, you become their martial granduncle? How? Shanghai Laner interrupted Lin Yi's words and asked curiously. Linny did not know whether to laugh or cry. He thought that Shanghai Laner was curious about the coincidence of the names of the 3 sects of the North Island, but it was not the case at all. She was concerned about the fact that Lin Yi became the Grand Master. These 2 things were completely unrelated. It was not easy for the 2 of them to talk about it. Well, to be honest, these 2 things were actually the same thing. Lin Yi simply put the introduction of the other sects aside and continued, I became the Grand Master of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island because their cultivation method is the cultivation method of our Blue Cloud Pavilion, and it is only an incomplete cultivation method and martial arts technique, so it takes twice the effort to cultivate with half the result. I completed the cultivation method and martial arts technique of the Blue Cloud sect, and said that I am the primordial spirit of the ancient Blue Cloud sect, so I became the Grand Master. Shanghai Laner suddenly exclaimed, there is such a thing? Not only the name is the same, but even the cultivation method is the same? If that's the case, is the Soaring sect of the North Island the same as our Soaring Pavilion? Can I also become the Grand Master if I go there? Linny smiled and thought to himself, not only are you the Grand Master of the Soaring sect of the North Island, but you are also the ancestor of the Shangguan family. That's right, it is indeed like this. The Soaring sect and Xuanji sect all cultivate the cultivation method and martial arts technique of our Soaring Pavilion and Xuanji Pavilion. Of course, they are all incomplete. In addition, there is the independent Shangguan family from the Soaring sect, as well as the Snow Sword faction, 5 Element sect, Okuda family, and so on. Linny looked at Okuda with interest. When it came to the Okuda family, Lin Yi did not believe that he would not have any reaction. They could only go back and look for information, ask others, and so on. You don't need to worry. As long as your sister-in-law's condition hasn't deteriorated, she will definitely be able to find her primordial spirit. I will definitely help you with this matter. Okuda patted Lin Yi's shoulder and solemnly promised. I hope so. Lin Yi sighed softly. Han Jingjing's primordial spirit projection was for his sake. If something happened to her, Lin Yi would never be able to forgive himself. Sydney came up and said that the banquet was ready. The three of them could only put down the problem of Han Jingjing, go down to eat something, and continue to talk about the supreme ancient underworld and the secular world. After 3 rounds of wine, Okuda asked curiously, "Brother Lin, your strength has now broken through to the peak of the mysterious ascension late stage. How did you do it?" According to common sense, after reaching the mysterious ascension stage, it is very difficult to raise one's level. Even if there is a profound raising pill, it is not common, and you can't take it when you are unconscious. But you can automatically level up continuously. This really makes me, your big brother, shocked. Regarding this matter, the Will of Heaven was also very curious. He wanted to break through to the mysterious ascension stage, but the meridians in his body were all broken. If it wasn't for Lin Yi's help, he would be a cripple now. What the number 1 Yuanying stage cultivator, being able to fight across realms, it was useless. Now the Will of Heaven had finally succeeded in advancing to the early mysterious ascension stage, but the speed of his cultivation was quite slow. If Lin could tell him how he leveled up, it should be very helpful to him. After Okuda finished speaking, he felt that it was a little inappropriate. This question had already involved the privacy of Lin Yi's cultivation, so he immediately said, "Brother, it's better not to say this kind of thing, lest it is leaked. That would be bad." Lin Yi smiled faintly and waved his hand. "There is nothing that can't be said, Brother Okuda. You don't have to worry so much. In fact, I have just mentioned that the people of the ancient small Jianghu mainly focus on refining their divine sense. They even use their divine sense to condense alchemy fire. In their place, as long as the level of their divine sense goes up, the strength of their body will also improve. So it is probably because of the increase in the level of my divine sense that my body also improved. So that's how it is. This is indeed an incredible method. It is worth learning from," Okuda said in amazement. The improvement of divine sense could actually lead to the improvement of the strength of the body. It was a pity that there was no cultivation method to cultivate divine sense. Otherwise, Okuda would want to start cultivating divine sense immediately. The expression of the Will of Heaven changed slightly. He should also be considering whether this method was suitable for him, but he was not sure at the moment. Lin Yi stretched out his hand in front of his eyes, clenched his fist, and then loosened it. After repeating this a few times, he couldn't help but have a strange feeling in his heart. After such a long time, he had become accustomed to the state of the soul body. Suddenly returning to the body was really a bit difficult to adapt. Originally, he thought that he would be more powerful after returning to his original body, but in fact, his primordial spirit could do everything that his original body could do after mastering the method of divine sense attack. In battle, he could even transform into the primordial spirit state and reverse the situation unexpectedly. So, what was the use of leaving this physical body? In fact, Lin Yi had really dug his own horns. If there was no body, no matter how strong the soul body was, it was still rootless duckweed. For example, Lin Yi had the soul of the azure dragon in the space of his jade pendant. He would tell Lin Yi how big a loss it was to lose the body. Okuda had a great interest in the cultivation method of the ancient small Jianghu, so he continued to ask a lot of questions in this regard. Lin Yi also answered without reservation. Of course, there was nothing substantial in it. Chapter 5789. As for the spiritual knowledge grassroots and spiritual knowledge fruits, they would definitely not be sold. The spiritual knowledge grassroots could be given to others. As for the spiritual knowledge fruit, although Lin Yi had no use for it, he was going to study it to see if there was a recipe for using the spiritual knowledge fruit as medicine. If he could refine it into medicinal pills, not only would the quantity be greatly increased, but the effect should also be much better than eating it directly. There was no other way. There were too many people around Lin Yi. The quantity he needed was not something that could be satisfied with a dozen spiritual knowledge fruits. Refining them into medicinal pills was the best choice. The Will of Heaven knew that Lin Yi was also a person who cultivated the God's creation battle art, but because of the presence of Okuda, many questions could not be asked directly. He could only ask some things about the ancient Jianghu. He thought that if he talked to Lin Yi alone later, he might be able to make great progress in the cultivation of the God's creation battle art. When the atmosphere between the guests and the host was harmonious, the restriction outside the Tiandan Pavilion was triggered. Because of the return of Lin Yi, Tiandan Pavilion closed early today. It was a little strange that someone would deliberately come to the door. Tian Shan went out to take a look, and her face became a little ugly. Zheng Dongsheng? What is he doing here? Lin Yi just scanned with his divine sense and said strangely, could it be that the medicine sect knew that he was back, so they came to say hello? It seemed that the relationship between the two sides was not that good, right? During the time that Lin Yi left, Tiandan Pavilion had been suppressed by the medicine sect in various ways. Not only did they come to make trouble on the surface, but they also made small moves in the dark. If it were not for Okuda's protection, Tian Shan and Tian Shan would not have been able to hold on. Tian Shan turned back and asked Lin Yi, let's ignore them? It's rare for us to be so happy. Let's not let these guys spoil the mood. Lin Yi didn't care. He knew that the medicine sect had always been at odds with the Tiandan Pavilion. However, he had just come back, so he didn't want to take revenge for the time being. It wouldn't be too late to do it in a few days. They didn't want to pay attention to it, but Zheng Dongsheng refused to give up. When he saw that no one came to open the door of the Tiandan Pavilion, he directly touched the barrier. If it weren't for Nakajima's rule that no one was allowed to attack the barrier of the shop, maybe he would have broken it by force. Lin Yi's face immediately turned cold. He didn't want to pay attention to these clowns. They were too arrogant. It seemed that if he didn't teach them a lesson, they wouldn't know who they were. The Will of Heaven stretched out his hand and said, brother, don't worry about it. I'll handle this matter. It's rare for you to come back. You should take a good rest. After saying that, the Will of Heaven got up and walked out. After opening the barrier, he brought Tian Shan and Sydney to stand outside the gate. Zheng Dongsheng, what are you doing? If you want to buy medicinal pills, please come back tomorrow. As soon as Tian Shan came out, she said to Zheng Dongsheng unceremoniously. These days, the Tiandan Pavilion had been suppressed by the Tiandan Pavilion led by Zheng Dongsha. Now that Lin Yi was back, Tian Shan also had a backbone. Of course, she wouldn't be nice to Zheng Dongsheng. Tong Yangsua, who was behind Zheng Dongsheng, shouted, how dare you? Who are you? How dare you speak to Master Zheng like this? Don't you have any respect? No wonder your Tiandan Pavilion is going downhill. Who are you? The Will of Heaven interrupted Tong Yangsua's words with a sneer. He took a step forward and said, who are you to say what my sister's identity is? If you dare to point fingers at my sister, believe it or not, I'll kill you right now. Tong Yangsua's face turned pale, and he immediately shrank back. The fierce reputation of the Will of Heaven was not fake. If he said he would kill, then he would really kill. Zheng Dongsheng chuckled twice, reached out and clapped a few times, and said, the Deputy Island Master of Heaven is really powerful. You dare to say that you will kill people from our famous medicine sect in the street. What? The whole Middle Island is under the control of the Will of Heaven? I, Zheng Dongsheng, a 7th-grade alchemist, was almost scared to my knees by your prestige. The Will of Heaven glared and said, if you have something to say it quickly. Don't give me those useless things. What shit is a 7th-grade alchemist? Is it that rare? You can try taking another step forward. Zheng Dongsheng's face was stiff. He really didn't dare to take a step forward like this. Who knew what the Will of Heaven would do? Tong Yangsua braced himself to help Zheng Dongsheng out of the predicament and said, Master Zheng is too lazy to talk to a boorish person like you. Tian Shan, listen. You know the situation of your Tiandan Pavilion now. It's a compliment to say that it's deserted. How about giving your shop to our famous medicine sect? We won't treat you badly. The Will of Heaven laughed and said, it's really funny. Your famous medicine sect is nothing. How dare you come here to disgust people? Get lost. Don't make me say it again. The Will of Heaven, we are here to talk about business. Do you want to use your identity for personal gain by doing this? Or do you want to bully others? Zheng Dongsheng said with a sinister smile. If they could get hold of Tianxing's weakness and get him down, they could send his people up there. Then, they could get rid of the acting island master of Okuda State. Then, they would be able to control Middle Island. Therefore, Zheng Dongsheng now hoped that the Will of Heaven would make a mistake. Only when he made a mistake the famous medicine sect would have a chance to play the strategy of killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Tian Shan said coldly, "My big brother has already said that our Tiandan Pavilion will not do business with the famous medicine sect. Even if we want to buy something, we will buy the place of the famous medicine sect. You are not welcome here. Are you clear now? If you are clear, get lost." Zhang Dongsheng was slightly stunned. He wanted the will of heaven to continue to wrangle. He did not expect that Tian Shan would take over the conversation so decisively. For a moment, he did not know what to say. He could only give Tong Yangsua a look. Tong Yangsua understood. Although he was a little afraid of the will of heaven, he thought that this was the commercial street, and the will of heaven did not dare to make a move casually. His courage was finally strengthened. He rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward and shouted, "How dare you? A Tiandan Pavilion that is about to close down dares to say that it wants to buy the place of our famous medicine sect." It's simply, he did not have time to say anything, and it was estimated that he would not be able to say it again, because the will of heaven directly grabbed his neck and lifted him up. "The will of heaven, what are you doing? Put him down. If you dare to touch a hair of his, you are dead." Zhang Dongxing's expression changed suddenly, but he was secretly surprised. This guy was really fooled. As long as Zhang Dongsheng could use this reason to impeach the will of heaven together with several people, at that time, it would be natural to force him to resign. The will of heaven glanced at Zhang Dongxing disdainfully and said, "Is that so? Then let me see how I will die." Chapter 5790. Zhang Dongsheng was also shocked. He had never expected that the will of heaven would kill people on the street so fiercely. When he saw the will of heaven's cold eyes, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart and involuntarily took 2 steps back, for fear that the will of heaven would kill him again. The will of heaven said lightly, "This person violated the safety regulations of Middle Island. Tiandan Pavilion explicitly refused to let him enter. He also broke into the shop without permission, so he was killed on the spot. Take it as a warning. Remember, in Middle Island, no one can easily violate the shop." Zhang Dongsheng was dumbfounded. He originally thought that Tong Yangsua's death was not in vain. At least he could be used as a blackmail against the will of heaven, and this blackmail was very big, enough to kill the will of heaven. He did not expect that the will of heaven finally came up with such a high-sounding reason. Breaking in without permission was basically equivalent to robbery. Robbing a shop in Middle Island was indeed enough to kill him on the spot. But the question was, how did Tong Yangsua become robbing a shop? He would not dare to do so even if he had 2 guts. However, what the will of heaven said was not unreasonable. Tian Shan had made it clear that they were not welcome, but Tong Yangsua still foolishly took a step forward. They were originally at the place where the prohibition was triggered. By taking a step forward, they directly entered the actual range of Tiandan Pavilion. The will of heaven seized the opportunity to kill him, and the headless body was still lying in the line of life and death. Zhang Dongsheng looked at Tian Xing resentfully. He knew that Tong Yangsua had died for nothing, because Tian Xing had his reasons and evidence. Although it was a bit unreasonable, there was really nothing wrong with it. At most, it was just making a fuss over a minor issue. What? You still don't want to get out of here? Do you want to collect his body? The will of heaven looked at Zhang Dongsheng coldly and said. His murderous intent was directed at Zhang Dongsheng. Zhang Dongsheng was not stupid. If he went over to absorb Tong Yangsua's corpse, what if Tian Xing said that he was in cahoots with Tong Yangsua and wanted to rob the Heavenly Dam Pavilion? That would be a great injustice. For his own safety, he definitely could not go over. The will of heaven. Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you're the Deputy Island Master of Middle Island? Everyone's eyes are watching. What exactly is going on is not up to you to decide. You're not the only Deputy Island Master on Middle Island. Zhang Dongsheng didn't dare to go forward, but he didn't leave either. Instead, he continued to provoke them. Of course, Zhang Dongsheng would never enter the Tiandan Pavilion without Tian Chan's consent. As long as the will of heaven dared to come out and touch him, he had enough reasons to impeach the will of heaven. If there could be one more position of Deputy Island Master, the power of the medicine sect in Middle Island would be even more stable. The will of heaven said disdainfully, Do whatever you want. Take your dog back first." After that, he kicked Tong Yangsua's headless body directly to Zheng Dongsheng. Knowing that this cowardly bandit didn't dare to come over to collect the body, the will of heaven was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. "Tian Shan, let's go in and continue eating. There's no need to pay attention to this petty person." The will of heaven called out to Tian Shan and prepared to go in. Although the will of heaven had always been bold and unrestrained, he was also very meticulous. He had seized the opportunity to kill Tong Yangsua, which was equivalent to cutting off one of Zheng Dongsheng's arms. Furthermore, Zheng Dongsheng couldn't find any evidence to use against him. This was already a small victory. Moreover, he was in a good mood since Linny was back. It wouldn't be too late to teach Zheng Dongsheng a lesson in the future. "Deputy Island Master Heaven is so impressive," someone said coldly from afar. At the same time, they were approaching quickly. The will of heaven stopped in his tracks. He turned around and said calmly, "Wu Miao, are you going to meddle in this too?" Zheng Dongsheng's face lit up with joy. He quickly cupped his fists and said, "Island owner Wu, you've come at the right time. This Tianxing is too arrogant. He actually dared to kill someone in front of everyone. Island owner Wu, please uphold justice for our medicine sect today." Wu Miao looked stern and righteous. She reached out her hand to stop Zheng Dongsheng and said sternly, "Don't worry, Alchemist Zheng. As the Vice Island Lord of Middle Island, I will never tolerate anyone abusing their power for personal gain and bullying others. I will definitely investigate this matter and give everyone an explanation." A mocking look appeared on the will of heaven's face as he said calmly, "Deputy Island Master Wu, you are indeed impartial and impartial. You have already come to a conclusion without any investigation, right?" Wu Miao first said that she wouldn't tolerate people abusing their power for personal gain and bullying others. Then, she said that she would investigate the matter and get to the bottom of it. She was basically saying that the heavens were in the wrong. Anyone with a discerning eye could understand. However, almost no one dared to say it out loud like the will of heaven. However, everyone knew that the will of heaven and Wu Miao didn't get along. Therefore, it was normal for them to be at loggerheads. "Tianxing, even if you're also one of the Vice Island Masters, as the Executive Vice Island Master, I still have the authority to discipline you. If you want to say that I'm impartial, there's no problem. Let's go back and investigate this matter first." Wu Miao said coldly to the will of heaven. Regardless of whether the will of heaven had done anything wrong, as long as Wu Miao brought him back, he would find a way to find a loophole. Wu Miao didn't need to give any orders. The 8 bodyguards who had followed her spread out and surrounded the will of heaven. In terms of strength, the 8 bodyguards combined were no match for the will of heaven. However, they represented the Island Master's pavilion. If the will of heaven dared to resist or even injure any of them, Wu Miao would have nothing to say. However, the will of heaven didn't care about Wu Miao at all. Instead, he laughed loudly and said, "Wu Miao, you are just an executive deputy island master. Do you think you are so great just because you keep talking about it? How dare you send people to arrest a deputy island master without any evidence? How dare you?" Wu Miao snorted nonchalantly. "No evidence? Aren't the corpses on the ground and the witnesses evidence? Pill Master Zheng is a direct witness. The will of heaven, I advise you to behave yourself. If you resist, even Okuda won't be able to protect you. Why should I protect Deputy Island Master Heaven?" A displeased voice came from Tiandan Pavilion, and Wu Miao's expression instantly changed. This voice belonged to Okuda, whom Wu Miao had mentioned earlier. Why hadn't anyone told her that Okuda had come to Tiandan Pavilion? While Wu Miao's expression changed, Okuda slowly walked out and looked at Wu Miao coldly. Zheng Dongsheng did not dare to offend someone like Okuda who had such a powerful background. If he was still the second-seed alchemist in the East Continent's yellow-rank Morning Star Cultivator Academy, he would not have to fear Okuda too much. It was a pity that he had been chased out. Wu Miao sighed in her heart. Okuda clearly wanted to support Tiandan Pavilion and the will of heaven, so Medicine Sect had no one to blame for coming to their doorstep. If he still couldn't understand, then he really didn't deserve to be the executive deputy island master. This subordinate understands. Don't worry, Island Lord. Alchemist Zhang will cooperate with this subordinate to resolve this matter. Once there is a result, this subordinate will personally report to Island Lord. Wu Miao became even more respectful. If they wanted to deal with Okuda, they couldn't arouse any suspicions from him. They were subservient now, so that they could kill him in one strike in the future. Wu Miao gritted her teeth and comforted herself. Then, she gestured for her subordinates to take Zhang Dongsheng away. Both of them were smart people. With Okuda and the will of heaven supporting Tiandan Pavilion, they definitely wouldn't be able to get anything out of this. They could only go back and discuss countermeasures. The will of heaven wanted medicine sect to compensate them, but unfortunately, Okuda was here, so they couldn't bring themselves to do that. They could only drop the matter. In any case, they had killed a dog from medicine sect, so it wasn't a loss. After Wu Miao and Zhang Dongsheng left, they went to another property of medicine sect. They sent someone to call Southern Polar Light over for a discussion while they talked about Tiandan Pavilion. Island Lord Wu, why did Okuda and the will of heaven appear at Tiandan Pavilion at the same time? Do you think there's something wrong with Lin Yi? Zhang Dongsheng frowned and guessed uneasily. He really did sound like the Emperor of Truth. Wu Miao shook her head and said, "It's hard to say. Lin Yi has been in primordial spirit projection for almost 2 years now, right? He hasn't woken up for so long, so I'm guessing he's not coming back. Actually, Okuda only supports Tiandan Pavilion because of Lin Yi. If Lin Yi wasn't around, I don't think he would care about Tiandan Pavilion's survival. I heard that Lin Yi fainted last time, so I don't think he's going to make it. Do you think Okuda has taken a fancy to those 2 women?" Zhang Dongsheng's eyes suddenly lit up as he chuckled. The information he'd gathered was obviously about the futures exchange, and he hadn't heard anything about Han Jingjing saving Lin Yi. Zhang Dongsheng, on the other hand, was quite interested in this sort of boring gossip. Wu Miao snorted, but didn't agree with Zhang Dongsheng. Instead, she said coldly, "Okuda isn't a shallow person. Although the 2 women at Tiandan Pavilion are stunning, he wouldn't covet his friends' women." "I'm pretty sure about this." Zhang Dongsheng glanced at Wu Miao strangely. He was just making a random guess. Why did she look so unhappy? "Alchemist Zhang, if we want to deal with Okuda, we must accurately grasp and analyze his personality and behavior patterns. We must not put our subjective assumptions on Okuda. Otherwise, we will be the ones to suffer in the end." Wu Miao reminded them solemnly. She did not want to see the plan they had been working on for so long to be ruined by these idiotic teammates. Zhang Dongsheng laughed dryly and said, "You're right, Island Lord Wu. But we can also make reasonable assumptions, right? Since it's uncertain, we might be able to come up with a better idea if we make assumptions." Wu Miao snorted again, but couldn't be bothered to say anything else. She picked up the teacup and slowly sipped on it. The 2 of them fell silent. Chapter 5792. Island Lord Wu, Master Zhang. I heard you got into a conflict with Okuda and the will of heaven? Nantian Aurora hurried over and cupped his fists in greeting before he immediately asked about it. "You're quite well informed," Wu Miao replied indifferently since she wasn't in a good mood. Nantian Aurora was a little baffled. However, he could tell that Wu Miao was unhappy, so he could only turn to ask Zhang Dongsheng. "Master Zhang, what exactly happened?" Zhang Dongsheng snorted twice and briefly explained what had happened just now. Of course, he skipped over the parts where he embarrassed himself. Nantian Aurora rubbed his chin and pondered for a long time before he said, "Island Lord Wu, Master Zhang, I think there's something strange about this. Okuda and the will of heaven suddenly appeared at Tiandan Pavilion. Something must have happened. I reckon the only person who could make them appear at the same time is Lin Yi. Do you think that Lin Yi has woken up? But he has been projecting his primordial spirit for 2 years. You know this better than anyone else. Have you ever heard of someone who can project their primordial spirit for 2 years and return?" Wu Miao narrowed her eyes as she looked at Nantian Aurora. She didn't seem concerned about Lin Yi waking up. Zhang Dongsheng nodded in agreement. However, he immediately said, "Speaking of which, Lin Yi is the only person who could make both of them appear at Tiandan Pavilion at the same time. If Lin Yi didn't return, do you think Lin Yi would have died?" Nantian, Aurora, and Wu Miao were stunned, and their jaws dropped involuntarily. That's right. Why couldn't Linny have died? He had been projecting his primordial spirit for 2 years, and there was news that he had fainted. It was normal for him to have died. No, it should be said that this was more reasonable. However, if Linny died, would Okuda still need to go to Tiandan Pavilion to support them? When Nantian Aurora thought of this, he immediately brought it up. After all, Okuda State was taking care of Heavenly Pill Pavilion out of respect for Lin Yi. If this fellow was finished, would he still stand up for Heavenly Pill Pavilion? Wu Miao immediately shook her head and said, No. If Linny died, Okuda would definitely do something like this. This is to show how magnanimous he is. He definitely wouldn't find it troublesome. Zhang Dongshen clapped and said, That's right. That must be the case. Lin Yi died a good death for Lin Yi. That will have heaven killed Tong Yangsua to intimidate medicine sect. I'm sure that if he had the chance, he would have killed me as well. That Tong Tian wouldn't have threatened Tiandan Tong. Can of Tong. Tian Dongling of Mountain Yuda. Tian is Lin. Nantian Aurora's eyes lit up, and he laughed heartily. In that case, this might be true. Island Lord Wu, as long as Lin Yi is really dead, Will of Heaven's position won't be so stable. The Central Chamber of Commerce was shielded from divine senses, so Lin Yi couldn't use his divine sense to see what was going on inside. He immediately missed Hongzhong when he saw Si Haishao, who was supposed to be on the North Island. Si Haishao was surprised to see Lin Yi. He said proudly, Oh, it's Lin Yi. I'm the head manager here. If you need any help, just let me know. But you'll need spirit jades. Seems like you're doing pretty well. You're even a head manager here. Work hard and don't be so lecherous in the future, Lin Yi said casually, but Si Haishao's face darkened. However, he quickly composed himself. It was in his nature to be lecherous, and he couldn't change it. As for Lin Yi, Si Haishao would definitely stab him in the back if he had the chance. Si Haishao had actually been transferred to the Central Chamber of Commerce. Back when he was on the North Island, he had barely done anything to harm Lin Yi. Moreover, he didn't have any achievements in gathering intelligence, so it would be strange if he hadn't been sent away. Chapter 57-93. Lin Yi didn't care. He smiled faintly and said, Si Haishao, are you the person in charge here? Don't you understand? I'm the shopkeeper here, which means I'm the person in charge. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't dawdle all day. Si Haishao once again emphasized the words head manager in order to make himself appear more powerful. In fact, when it came to power, Si Haishao was far less powerful than when he was in the North Island. So he didn't even know that the Center and Lin Yi had reached an agreement. Well, I have a letter to send to the secular world. Lin Yi didn't want to talk nonsense with this guy. He directly took out a letter and handed it to Si Haishao. Si Haishao snorted, raised his head and said disdainfully, This business has been stopped. You can go somewhere else. I won't see you out. Lin Yi frowned slightly. The wormhole tunnel of the center had been shared with him. Why was it so troublesome to send a letter? If Han Jingjing came back, this kind of thing didn't need to be done through the center. Don't pretend to be the boss if you can't make the decision. Hurry up and find someone who can take charge here, Lin Yi said impatiently. If he wasn't worried about Han Jingjing, he would have slapped him. Si Haishao's annoying face made him angry. Don't you understand human language? I'm the shopkeeper here. This business has been stopped. Hurry up and leave. Don't make trouble here. Lin Yi was impatient. Si Haishao was impatient. He continued to drive Lin Yi away. Lin Yi didn't want to talk nonsense. He directly slapped Si Haishao in the face and sent him flying. Since he wanted to be slapped so badly, it seemed inappropriate not to be satisfied. It was said that one should look at the master before beating a dog. Since the master didn't come out, he would beat the dog first. He thought it would come out soon. How dare you hit me? How dare you hit me in the Chamber of Commerce of the center? Lin Yi, you're dead. Si Haishao spat out a few teeth and roared hysterically at Lin Yi. Even without Si Haishao's order, a guard rushed out and fiercely pounced on Lin Yi, swinging the machete in his hand. Mid-stage profound ascension? The Central Chamber of Commerce is indeed rich. They can even use such an expert as a guard. Lin Yi clicked his tongue in wonder. However, his eyes were filled with disdain. He was only at the middle stage of profound ascension, yet he dared to be so arrogant in front of Lin Yi, he would not even know how he died. With another simple slap, this profound ascension middle stage guard flew out at a speed faster than when he came. Before he landed, he spat out a few teeth, which was no different from Si Haixiao's situation. Si Haixiao was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but swallow the words he was about to say. He knew that Lin Yi was strong, but when did Lin Yi become so strong? An expert at the middle stage of profound ascension was enough to be the vice island master of Middle Island. In the end, Lin Yi didn't even look at him. With a casual slap, he sent him flying like a fly. How could they still have fun like this? Fortunately, it was still early. There were no outsiders in the Central Chamber of Commerce other than Lin Yi. Otherwise, this would really be a big loss of face. Si Haixiao originally wanted to use the ban of Middle Island to talk about it, but in the end, he tactfully didn't say anything. Si Haixiao, are you still in charge here? Lin Yi waved his hand and looked at Si Haixiao with a mocking expression. Si Haixiao hurriedly shook his head and said, No, I'm just a shopkeeper. I can't make the decision. Please wait. I'll find someone in charge right away. After saying this, Si Haixiao didn't dare to be negligent anymore. He quickly got up and ran to inform the people above him. Soon, he ran back and said, I'm asking you to go see him. It's on the 4th floor. This way, please. Half of Si Haixiao's face was swollen, but he didn't dare to treat it first. He led Lin Yi to the corridor with half fear and half respect. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of any ambush set up by the Central Chamber of Commerce. Middle Island was almost the same as his territory. There was no need to doubt its safety. Moreover, with his current strength, cultivators at the mountain opening stage might not be his opponent. There was really nothing to worry about. After leading Lin Yi to a room on the 4th floor, Si Haixiao retreated. Lin Yi scanned the room with his divine sense and discovered that every room had a divine sense shielding effect. However, it wasn't very strong. As long as he wanted to, he could easily break it. However, Lin Yi wasn't here to cause trouble, so he didn't intend to force his way in. He directly pushed open the door and walked in. Kong Ming. What surprised Lin Yi was that the person inside was actually an acquaintance. This kid actually became Si Haixiao's direct superior. It seemed like his bootlicking skills were improving, so he climbed up quickly. He seemed to be doing quite well. Kong Ming smiled proudly and said, Lin Yi, you didn't expect to see me here, right? I heard that you're very awesome. You came here early in the morning to beat people up. What about it? Do you think the Central Chamber can't deal with you? Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, I'm quite surprised. You're actually still alive? You even became the person in charge of the Central Chamber? Forget it. These are not important. I want to send a letter to the secular world. What do you say? What can I say? For the sake of our acquaintance, if you beg me, I'll send it to you. Kang Xiaoming laughed heartily. He crossed his legs and shook them quickly. He looked like a villain who was intoxicated with success. Is it because I haven't beaten you for a long time, so your skin is a little itchy? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly and said faintly, It may not be interesting to beat others, but he was very interested in beating up Kong Ming. Kong Ming snorted and said, Lin Yi, who are you trying to scare? Isn't it just a profound ascension late stage? Is it that great? In the small Jianghu, in the secular world, you are powerful. But in the heavenly stage island, what is this strength? It's better for you to know your place. You mean you've already surpassed me? Then let's try 2 moves. Lin Yi stretched out his hand and hooked his finger at Kong Ming. Kong Ming was suddenly speechless. How could his strength compare with Lin Yi? He was really looking for a beating. After a pause, Kong Ming straightened his neck and said, Why do you care if I have surpassed you or not? Let me tell you, my men are stronger than you. What do you have to be proud of? Afraid that Lin Yi would continue to pester this issue, Kong Ming simply changed the topic and said, Okay, don't talk about those useless things. I know about your things in the small Jianghu, in the secular world. Or tell me what you are doing here. Kong Ming, are you scared? I said just now, send me a letter and die in the secular world. Linny snorted and did not continue to find trouble with him. Walking out of the Central Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yi suddenly felt that he should go back to the North Island as soon as possible. Zhong Pingliang and Kong Mingming both came to the Middle Island. He didn't know if there were any changes in the North Island. Shanghai Laner came from the North Island, but this young lady wouldn't care at all what was different about the North Island. Where there was a center, the power structure changed very quickly. For example, if there was no Lin Yi, the ancient small Jianghu might have been completely controlled by the center. There were a lot of masters on Sky-class Island, and the center wouldn't be able to control too many big sects in a short amount of time. But the power structure was definitely changing, and Linny had to get to the bottom of what had happened in the past 2 years. The best target was, of course, Zhong Pingliang, who'd gotten into the center and held a high position. He only hoped that Zhong Pingliang could work hard and not completely fall for the center after getting benefits from the center. I wonder how the King of Junk is doing now. The things in the forging pool should be almost done, right? Linny sighed softly, thinking about the King of Junk. It was all because of Han Jingjing. With the automatic forging mechanism, the King of Junk might be able to successfully end things. But where did Han Jingjing's primordial spirit go? After returning to the Heavenly Dam Pavilion, Lin Yi went to check on Han Jingjing again. She was still the same, and there were no signs of her suddenly waking up. This made him feel very helpless. After chatting with Tian Shan and Sydney for a while, Lin Yi started making some elixirs for them to sell. Tiandan Pavilion had been suppressed by the medicine sect for too long. It just so happened that Tong Yangsua was killed when the medicine sect came looking for trouble yesterday, so it was the best time for Tiandan Pavilion to strike back. When the sky turned dark, someone from the Central Chamber of Commerce came to find Lin Yi, saying that they wanted to discuss sending a letter to the common world. Lin Yi guessed that it was Zhong Pingliang, so he followed the person to the Central Chamber of Commerce without saying anything. Kong Mingming laughed when he saw Linny. Linny, you really do come and go at my beck and call. Not bad, not bad. Seeing that you're so obedient, I'll put in a good word for you in front of Liang Bro and get him to agree to send a letter to the common world. Lin Yi didn't even look at him, ignoring Kong Mingming completely. When he walked past him, he said faintly, "Idiot." The smile on Kong Mingming's face froze as he pointed at Lin Yi. "Say that again. Do you believe that I won't kill you?" Lin Yi, who was already on the stairs, didn't turn his head, but he still fulfilled Kong Mingming's request and raised his voice, "Idiot." The person who led the way had already told Lin Yi that it was Zhong Pingliang, the special envoy from the Central Chamber of Commerce, who wanted to see Lin Yi. The location was at the top floor of the Central Chamber of Commerce, so Lin Yi didn't want to talk to Kong Mingming at all. He would just go up and find Zhong Pingliang himself. The veins on Kong Ming's forehead were bulging. He felt that he was really an idiot. After being scolded once, he still wanted to be scolded again. He wanted to hit Lin Yi, but he knew that his strength was far from Lin Yi's. If he hit Lin Yi, he would be asking for a beating. "Stop, this is the Central Chamber of Commerce. It's not a place where you can just walk around." Kong Mingming rushed up the stairs sullenly, blocking Lin Yi's way. He couldn't win in a fight, nor could he win in an argument. Kong Mingming could only stop Lin Yi to regain some sense of balance. Lin Yi purposely frowned. "Didn't you send someone to tell me that Zhong Pingliang wants to see me? Just tell me if you're going to send me a letter or not. Don't play these annoying tricks all day." Kong Mingming was speechless. This time, it was Zhong Pingliang who wanted to see Lin Yi. He probably wanted to show off to Lin Yi after he got the position, so Kong Mingming came first to knock down Lin Yi's arrogance. Unfortunately, the one who was knocked down was Kong Mingming himself. Chapter 5795. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? When they reached Pingliang's room, Kong Mingming glared at Lin Yi, motioning for him to stay put. He knocked on the door respectfully. "Liang Bro, Lin Yi is here. Come in," Pingliang said faintly from inside, and then went silent. Kong Mingming was about to turn around and call for Lin Yi, but the latter pushed him to the side and pushed the door open. The decorations and furnishings in this room were almost the same as those CEOs' offices on Earth. There was a sofa, a desk, a bar counter, a wine cabinet, a computer, and so on. As expected, with a wormhole, anything could be obtained. Pinliang sat at his desk with a serious face, clicking his mouse from time to time as if he was working on something important. He didn't seem to notice the arrival of Lin Yi and Kong Mingming at all. Lin Yi scanned the room with his divine sense and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. The kid was really working on something important. The advanced minesweeper was already halfway done, and he couldn't afford to be distracted. Kong Mingming squeezed past Lin Yi angrily and jogged to Pinliang's desk, bowing and smiling. "Liang bro, I brought the kid Lin Yi here. Do you think we should arrange for a few more people to come over? This kid is very dangerous." Pinliang didn't even want to talk to the idiot anymore. If he really wanted to send more people, he would have done it a long time ago. What kind of bullshit was he spouting now, especially in front of Lin Yi? "I'm really worried about his IQ, But since Kong Mingming said it in front of him, Pinliang gave up on the difficult task of minesweeper. He raised his head and looked at Lin Yi, snorting coldly through his nose. That expression on his face made it clear that he was looking down on Lin Yi. Lin Yi's heart sank, wondering if Pinliang had really gone back on his word. After all, Lin Yi didn't use any means to control him. If he really betrayed Lin Yi, it wouldn't be strange. But if that was the case, Lin Yi would still feel that it was a pity. After all, Pinliang's performance had been good, and he had gained his trust. When Kong Mingming turned around, he had already straightened his body. He slightly raised his head and said in an arrogant manner, "Lin Yi, hurry up and greet Brother Liang when you see him. Do you want to send a letter to the secular world? Let me tell you, this is all Brother Liang needs to say. Do you understand? If you do, come over." Pinliang's hatred for Lin Yi was no less than Kong Mingming's hatred for him. So, Kong Mingming thought that if he stepped on Lin Yi in front of Pinliang, he would definitely be appreciated. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of Lin Yi's anger, he would have done it even more. Lin Yi was already thinking if he should teach Kong Mingming a lesson, in case the guy forgot his surname and kept jumping out to be arrogant. It was annoying. Pinliang waved his hand casually. "Xiaoming, you can leave first. I need to talk to him. You don't have to do anything else." Kong Mingming looked back at Pinliang, confused. He realized that it wasn't a joke, so he bowed. "All right, Liang bro, I'll leave first. Call me if you need anything." As much as he wanted to stay and see what Pinliang and Lin Yi were talking about, Kong Mingming didn't dare do so. He walked out obediently, and when he passed by Lin Yi, he threatened, "Lin Yi, be careful. It's all our people outside. If you try anything funny, I guarantee you won't be able to leave the Chamber of Commerce." Lin Yi didn't waste any words. He reached out and grabbed Kong Mingming's neck, throwing him out of the room and closing the door, isolating them from the outside world. This room could even block out divine senses, so there was no need to worry about any sound leaking out. Since Pinliang wanted to talk to Lin Yi alone, perhaps his worries were unnecessary. As expected, Pinliang's face changed as soon as the door closed. That cold, aloof look from before was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a warm smile as he rushed over to Lin Yi. "Boss, you're back. I was so worried." Pinliang couldn't hold back the excitement in his heart any longer. He pounced on Lin Yi and gave him a hug before inviting him to sit on the sofa. "Pinliang, you're doing well. You're already the Nakajima envoy of the Chamber of Commerce." Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. Pinliang was still his follower. Pinliang. He didn't betray him just because of his high position. It wasn't easy. "It's just a coincidence. Actually, what I want the most is to be able to stay by your side, boss. This Nakajima envoy is so boring," Pinliang said with a smile. He turned around and took out a bottle of red wine, pouring a glass for both Lin Yi and himself. Lin Yi felt as if he'd returned to the common world as he accepted the glass Pinliang handed him. Everything here was just like the common world. There wasn't the slightest difference. "Boss, I heard that you went back to the common world, so I spent a lot of effort and went through many channels to get transferred to Nakajima. I wanted to know your situation first thing, but it's been 2 years and you still haven't come back. To be honest, I feel like I've lost my backbone." Let's not talk about how anxious I was. Luckily, you're back safe and sound. It's good that you're fine. It's good that you're fine. Pinliang clinked his glass with Lin Yi's, full of emotions. So Pinliang came to Nakajima as the envoy because he was worried about him. Linny didn't expect this guy to be so loyal to him. After taking a sip of wine, he smiled faintly. You're considerate. I heard from Kong Ming Ming that you, as the Nakajima envoy, are the person in charge here, right? Pinliang nodded and smiled. That's right. I basically have the final say in the central affairs of Nakajima, but there's a mysterious man in black above me. I don't know who he is, but he seems to be in charge of the entire central personnel of Sky-class Island. As for the North Island, the person in charge is Su Lingchong. This guy has some tricks up his sleeve. I transferred him to Nakajima, and he's the best shield, so no one suspected anything. Linny understood what Pinliang meant. One mountain couldn't accommodate two tigers. Since Su Lingchong was in charge of the North Island, Pinliang naturally had to find another place to develop. Nakajima probably didn't consider him at first, but with Su Lingchong's excuse and his own operation, he was able to come to Nakajima. Chapter 5796. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Shua, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. By the way, how many higher-ups are there on the Heavenly Island? Linny wanted to have a good understanding of the central power structure here so that he could deal with them in the future, so he specifically asked. Pinliang smiled bitterly. Boss, I really don't know about that. It's always been that mysterious man in black contacting us. I said it's Nakajima's envoy, but he's still far from being able to enter the core circle. Linny nodded. This situation was normal. If Pinliang was able to get into the core circle in such a short time, then it meant that he was suited to work in the center. It was better to move to the center as soon as possible. Then you should know what the center has been up to recently, right? Linny had to settle for the next best thing. This problem should be much simpler. Pinliang was Nakajima's envoy, and even if he couldn't participate directly in the core of the plan, he had to be able to cooperate. From those clues, it was still very easy to find some clues to deduce what the center wanted to do. Pinliang thought about it and said, speaking of movements, I heard that the center is planning something called South Island. I'm not sure about the specifics. It's being handled by the mysterious man in black and Master Pao. I haven't had the chance to find out much useful information. Master Pao? Who are you? Linny asked curiously. Perhaps this person was a key figure in the center. It would be great if he could understand more about him. Love goes small, say. Netka Pinliang shrugged. I'm not too sure myself. I've only seen this Master Pao once. He was wearing a hooded cloak, and his face was covered with a black cloth. I was wondering if he was Pao, but he didn't say anything, so I didn't dare think too much about it. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. Perhaps that was a possibility, but he wasn't in a rush. He'd look into it in the future. If Master Pao really was Zhang Naipeo, Pinliang might be able to turn things around. Speaking of which, Pinliang's authority as Nakajima's envoy was too low. He didn't have much useful information, but he hadn't been in the center for long. It was already hard enough for him to climb up the ranks. He shouldn't have too many requirements. Boss, there's no problem with the letter you wanted to send. I've specifically asked the higher-ups, and they said that you and the center have reached a 1-year non-aggression agreement. They've also given you the right to use the wormhole tunnel and research. We'll mind our own business and develop our own business. If there's anything you need to teleport, you can do it anytime. Pinliang didn't say much about Master Pao, instead returning to Lin Yi's letter. Lin Yi nodded casually. The signing of the agreement with the center should have been reported to Sky-class Island long ago, but Pinliang didn't know about it until now. It was obvious that he was only a member of the outer circle and only had a high position on the surface. Sky Island are heart first. Lin's Pinliang's heart Lin's letter was the center Lin's long Pinliang heart Pinliang agreement. If the South Island plan is carried out and you want to destroy it, isn't it tantamount to tearing up the armistice agreement? Linny paused and looked at Pinliang. You're saying that my agreement with the center includes Sky-class Island? Isn't it? Pinliang didn't know what was going on. That should be the case, But why didn't Linny think so? Linny slapped his forehead and said, I understand now. This time, I was really cheated by that woman, Lan Xiaoru. Her agreement didn't specify whether it was the mortal world or the heaven stage island. It only said that it was between the center and me, so it naturally included all places. Even if she wants me to return to heaven stage island, she can't just go and get in the way, right? Han Jingjing had already carefully found a hidden loophole in the agreement. She didn't expect there to be another one here, but it wasn't her fault. Maybe Han Jingjing didn't think that there was a problem with the one-year armistice with the center. This was all because of the information asymmetry. If Han Jingjing knew that the center had a plan for the South Island, she would have suggested that the one-year armistice was only for the mortal world. Pinliang heard this and immediately said to Linny, Boss, the center wants you not to interfere with their plan. It's obvious that this is very important to them. It's fine if you don't want that agreement, but you can't let the center carry out their plans smoothly. Linny nodded. You're right, but since this one-year period has been set, I have to abide by it. Although both of us don't really care about this agreement, I won't be the first to go back on my word. Then what should we do? Pinliang really didn't think that breaking the agreement was a problem, but if Linny kept his promise, Pinliang would only respect Lin even more. A person like this was worthy of his loyalty. People like Kang Ming, who treated promises like farts, would never be trusted. Lin Yi didn't answer Pinliang immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes and fell into deep thought. After a while, he smiled faintly. We won't break the agreement first, but if the center makes a move first, I won't have anything to worry about. Pinliang's eyes lit up. He clapped his hands and laughed. As expected, boss, you're right. We'll just let the center break the agreement. Since they knew that the center had a plan for the South Island, Lin Yi just needed to set up a plan in the South Island first. In the end, the center would definitely have a conflict with him because of this. At that time, they could say that the center broke the agreement, and that was the truth. There was no doubt about it. The only thing to worry about was the South Island. If Linny went there, it would be very difficult for him to escape. If he went back to set up a plan, who knew what would happen? The spirit beasts were not to be trifled with, especially that vermilion bird. Linny knew that he was far from being a match for vermilion bird. If he was discovered, he would be easily killed. Before Linny could speak, Pinliang patted his chest and said, Don't worry, boss. I'll definitely speed up the investigation regarding the South Island plan. As long as we have a detailed location and target, it'll be much easier for us to prepare in advance. When that time comes, it won't be us causing trouble, but the center will cause trouble for us. Chapter 5797. If it weren't for Chen Dongqing's betrayal, Dafeng Bro would have been killed on the spot. Linny didn't want this to happen to Zhong Pingliang again, so he would rather give up the plan to destroy the center than let Zhong Pingliang be caught for this reason. Although Lin Yi's words were simple, Zhong Pingliang could hear the meaning behind it. He was grateful in his heart and raised his glass. Boss, let's not talk too much. I wish us success in advance. With the crisp sound of glasses clinking, Lin Yi drank the red wine in the glass and put it down. Then I'll go back first. Let me know if there's any news. I'll remember. Boss, wait a moment. Let me put away the glass first. Zhong Pingliang also drank the wine, then took Lin Yi's glass to wash, wiped it dry, and put it back in place. He poured some red wine into his own glass and put it on the desk. If the people who just came in saw it, they would definitely think that Zhong Pingliang was drinking alone and had no intention of drinking with Lin Yi. Lin Yi nodded secretly. Zhong Pingliang seemed to have matured a lot, paying attention to these details. Otherwise, if he was seen through, he wouldn't need to inquire about the Southern Island plan. Who knew when he would disappear from the face of the earth? After finishing these things, Zhong Pingliang smiled and said to Linny, Boss, I'll have to trouble you again. Linny smiled carelessly and waved his hand, signaling Zhong Pingliang to do as he wanted. Seeing him like this, Linny was only happy and relieved. Why would he feel wronged? Zhong Pingliang turned back to the desk, picked up the wine glass and sat on the office chair. He put both his legs on the desk, and the expression on his face became cold and arrogant again. Linny had to give him a thumbs up for this acting. Kong Ming Ming, come in for a moment, Pinliang said coldly as he pressed a button on the side. This was probably a technological product from the common world. Otherwise, no one would be able to hear him yelling at the top of his lungs in the room. In just 2 or 3 seconds, Kong Ming Ming knocked on the door and came in. Obviously, he had been waiting outside the whole time. Brother Liang, you were looking for me? Kong Ming Ming walked in with a face full of smiles. He was very happy to see Pinliang's expression and Lin Yi sitting on the sofa without a cup of tea in front of him. Pinliang snorted, his face expressionless. The higher-ups said that we signed a 1-year truce with Lin Yi, and that will let him use the passage to the common world unconditionally. Send him out now. I don't want to see him anymore. Kong Ming Ming wasn't surprised by this news. He must have heard about it before, so he turned to Linny with a straight face. Did you hear that? Leave now, don't be an eyesore here. Luckily you signed a truce with us, or else you won't be walking out of this door today. This was a complete bluff. Kong Ming Ming knew that Lin Yi wouldn't do anything to him, so he had the courage to say this. Lin Yi laughed coldly. Zhong Pingliang, Kong Ming Ming, you two are just 2 small fry in the center. You don't even have the right to talk to me. I'm only here for Lan Xiaoru's sake today. If you trouble me like this again, believe it or not, I'll kill you too and Lan Xiaoru won't say anything. Kong Ming Ming's body shook. It was possible. To the higher-ups in the center, he was just a replaceable chess piece. If he was killed by Lin Yi, no one would come to avenge him. Kong Ming Ming was a little dispirited at this thought. He could only harumph. Stop bullshitting. We don't welcome you here. Leave. Don't come here if you have nothing to do. With that, he didn't dare wait for Lin Yi to continue. He quickly opened the door and signaled Lin Yi to leave. Behind Kong Ming Ming, Lin Yi winked at Zhong Pingliang as a farewell greeting. He then smiled coldly. Zhong Pingliang, I'll send the letter properly. If anything happens, I'll come back for you. Zhong Pingliang didn't seem to care at all. He didn't even want to talk to Lin Yi. Kong Ming Ming, who was standing at the door, was impressed. He dared to give Lin Yi the cold shoulder. Liang Bro was indeed Liang Bro. No wonder he's the envoy and I, Kong Ming Ming, am just the envoy's assistant. It doesn't make sense. His goal was achieved. Lin Yi didn't want to waste any more time. He said a few words and left, ignoring Kong Ming Ming at the door. Kong Ming Ming didn't dare to continue provoking Lin Yi. He didn't have any masters protecting him. He wouldn't be stupid enough to go up and ask for a beating. When he returned to Tiandan Pavilion, Ho Guanqi from Dan Hall, Kai Zhongyang from 5 Elements Commerce, and Wei Shinjin from Snow Sword School were all there. They welcomed Lin Yi when they saw him. Brother Lin, you're finally back. Heroes come from the young. You've projected your soul for 2 years. I'm so worried. If I didn't receive the news just now, I wouldn't even know you're back. I'll punish myself with 3 drinks later. Kai Zhongyang laughed and was the first to speak. His face was full of joy. As the vice president of 5 Elements Commerce, he was naturally very tactful and experienced in dealing with people. However, Lin Yi could feel that what Kai Zhongyang said just now was sincere. Although Ho Guanqi was also Kai Zhongyang's senior brother, he didn't want to be the first. After Kai Zhongyang finished speaking, he walked forward and cupped his fists with a smile. I've said it before. Brother Lin is a good man. Heaven helps him. There will definitely be no problem. Sure enough, it's just as I expected, right? The last sentence was asked to Kai Zhongyang. Kai Zhongyang laughed and agreed immediately. Wei Shinjin was the last to come up. He said excitedly, Boss, you're finally back. These 3 people took care of Tiandan Pavilion when Lin Yi wasn't around. However, the one who contributed the most was naturally Wei Shinjin. It was just that he happened to go back to the sect to deal with something today, so he didn't know the news of Lin Yi's return immediately. When Lin Yi took him in, he put the heart-devouring voodoo in him. If he didn't come back, Wei Shinjin would be buried with Lin Yi. However, he was really worried about the heart-devouring voodoo in the beginning. Slowly, he really fell in love with Tiandan Pavilion. He also really wanted to follow Lin Yi. Seeing Lin Yi back, he was happy from the bottom of his heart. This time, it was also thanks to Lin Yi giving the prescription to suppress the heart-devouring voodoo to Tianchan in advance. Otherwise, after 2 years, Wei Shinjin might not even have any bones left. Chapter 5798. With their cultivation at this level, they had no need for food at all. However, eating something with abundant spiritual qi could not only satisfy their appetite, but also improve their cultivation. Why not? They talked with Lin Yi while following him to the living room. Tianchan and Sydney did not come to accompany them, but were busy making some food and sending it up. Brother Lin, I came late today because I was going to the northernmost island to participate in the auction. If you came back 1 or 2 days later, you might not see me in the central island. Kai Zhongyang said with a laugh, pointing out the reason why he could not come at the first time today. Ho Guanqi happened to be refining a furnace of medicinal pills. After finishing, he received the news and came immediately. Linny waved his hand and did not care about these trivial things. Instead, he was very interested in the auction that Kai Zhongyang said. He had gone to the auction in the northernmost island with Hongzhong, and he still had a deep memory of it. So when he heard the news, he was a little excited. Anyway, he wanted to go back to the northernmost island. Of course, the northernmost island was the closest to the northernmost island. It would not delay anything if he went back by the way. Brother Kai, when will the auction in the northernmost island start? And when are you going to leave? Lin Yi asked casually. He didn't necessarily have to go to this auction if the time didn't match up. Kai Zhongyang laughed and said, the auction will start in about half a month. Our preparation work has almost been completed. It is estimated that we will leave in these 2 days. Brother Lin, are you interested in going to see it together? Linny pondered for a moment and did not immediately answer Kai Zhongyang's question. If Han Jingjing could wake up smoothly, he could rest assured to see what good things were in the auction in the northernmost island. However, Kai Zhongyang and the others were going to leave in these 2 days. It was a little rushed. He did not know if Han Jingjing could return in these 2 days. If he left Han Jingjing in a coma like this, Lin Yi really couldn't leave the middle island with peace of mind. Whether it was going back to the North Island or investigating the South Island plan of the Center of Destruction, he couldn't be compared with Han Jingjing. Seeing that Lin Yi did not speak, Ho Guanqi thought about it and said, Brother Lin, I have heard about Miss Han's situation. Unfortunately, my and Brother Kai's level of alchemy is too low, so we cannot help at all. But I think you should go to the auction in the northernmost island. Lin Yi was slightly stunned and said, is there something in the northernmost island auction that can help Jingjing's current situation? Without waiting for Ho Guanqi to answer, Kai Zhongyang clapped his hands and said, yes, if senior brother did not remind me, I really did not think of this. After saying that, he realized that it was too impolite to rush to speak. So Kai Zhongyang quickly apologized to Ho Guanqi, senior brother, I am sorry. I was excited and interrupted you. Ho Guanqi waved his hand and said with a smile, we are brothers. There is no need to apologize. You know this better than me. It is more appropriate for you to say it. Lin Yi did not care who said it. As long as it could help Han Jingjing, it was fine. However, he could not urge them, so he could only look at the two brothers with anticipation. Kai Zhongyang was also not polite. After expressing his apology to Ho Guanqi, he immediately said, it is like this. In this northernmost island auction, there will be a few precious things participating in the auction. Among them, there is a treasure that is beneficial to Miss Han. Brother Kai, please explain in detail. Lin Yi was anxious, but Kai Zhongyang did not get to the point, so he could only ask for guidance. In this auction, there is a spirit gathering branch. This is a treasure that can condense the spirit. As long as you carry it with you, it can constantly nourish the spirit and gather the power of spiritual sense. Miss Han's current situation is that after the spirit projection, it cannot return to the body normally. If you can have the spirit gathering branch, it should be able to guide the direction of the return of the spirit. Even if you can't wake up for a while, you can slowly gather the power of the spirit. Kai Zhongyang said in detail. This spirit gathering branch was really useful for Han Jingjing. After hearing this, Lin Yi had decided to get this spirit gathering branch at all costs. Even if Han Jingjing could wake up before this spirit gathering branch was also quite useful. Seeing that Lin Yi was very interested, Kai Zhongyang continued, in addition to the spirit gathering branch, there is also the soul wood. but this is a treasure that nourishes the spirit. It is not helpful for Miss Han's situation, but if these two can be used together, the effect may have a bonus effect. Lin Yi's heart moved. The soul wood was not very useful for Han Jingjing, but it should be very useful for ghost things. Moreover, with this thing, the spirit projection in the future would also be of great help. Brother Kai, it seems that I have to go to the auction this time. I will have to trouble you to take me there. Lin Yi smiled and cupped his hands at Kai Zhongyang. Although he could go to the northernmost island himself, it would be more convenient to go with Kai Zhongyang. Whether it was the soul wood or the spirit gathering branch, these treasures would definitely attract a lot of people. Lin Yi was not sure if he would have enough money to buy them. So on the way there, he would have to make more elixirs to sell? Kai Zhongyang laughed heartily and said, "Younger brother Lin is too polite. What trouble? To be able to travel with you is my honor. When the time comes, I will have to ask for your advice on elixir making." This wasn't just a polite thing to say. Although Kai Zhongyang was Zhang Liju's disciple, his elixir-making skills were far below even Zhang Dongsheng's, not to mention Lin Yi. After all, Lin Yi's name as a master elixir maker was one of the best in East Continent. Ho Guanqi laughed as well. "If that's the case, I will have to go as well. Otherwise, wouldn't I miss such a good opportunity?" "Haha, of course, Shixiang will have to come along. It's a rare opportunity. Wouldn't it be a waste to miss it?" Kai Zhongyang's face was full of joy. The more people going, the better it would be. Wei Shenjin followed. "Boss, can I go as well? Although I don't know much about elixir making, I can run errands and run errands." In the Snow Sword sect of Middle Island, Wei Shenjin was one of the more special ones. If he wanted to go with Lin Yi to the northernmost island, basically no one would object. "This time, I will hand him over to you. You must protect him." "Of course." Zhang Dongsheng smiled and nodded to Tong Woli. Without Tong Yangsui by his side, it was somewhat inconvenient to do things. Now that Tong Woli was here, it could be said that he had helped him a lot, so his attitude was considered gentle. As for Tong Yangsui dying because of him, Zhang Dongsheng never thought about it. Of course, those who followed him had to be prepared to die at any time. Tong Woli cupped his fists and bowed again, then finally said, "Grandmaster Zhang, this subordinate will do his best to assist Grandmaster. Moreover, this subordinate will definitely take revenge for my brother." Zhang Dongxing nodded and promised, "That's natural. I am also quite sad that Tong Yangsui died. This revenge must be avenged. You can rest assured that the will of heaven will take care of him sooner or later. As long as you can do your job wholeheartedly, you will soon see this scene." Tong Woli gritted his teeth and said, "Thank you, Grandmaster Zhang. When the time comes, please let this subordinate deal with the will of heaven. If this subordinate doesn't cut him into pieces, this subordinate will not be able to dispel the hatred in his heart." Of course, that's not a problem. That ignorant the will of heaven deserved such an ending. Zhang Dongxing agreed to Tong Yangsui's request. He did not need to take out any benefits, and this way, he could obtain Tong Woli's gratitude and loyalty. It was simply too worth it. Zhang Dongjue smiled and said, "Cousin, Tong Woli is meticulous and is a rare think tank. Therefore, I asked him to come over. Perhaps he can give some useful advice." "Oh, Woli, you are such a rare talent. Come, sit down and talk." Zhang Dongsheng revealed a pleasantly surprised expression and warmly invited Tong Woli to sit down. He looked like a courteous scholar, but Tong Woli was well aware that there was some sincerity in it. After thanking him, Tong Woli also sat down. However, he only put his hands on half of the chair and straightened his back, not daring to show the slightest disrespect. "Tong Woli, tell me, is there any way to deal with Tiandan Pavilion?" Zhang Dongjue casually glanced at Tong Woli and said lightly. This was to let Tong Woli show off in front of Zhang Dongsheng. Tong Woli immediately cupped his fists and said, "This subordinate thinks that since Lin Yi has returned, then Tiandan Pavilion can't be touched for the time being. Not to mention his own strength and ability, just Okuda Prefecture, Hoguanqi, Kai Zhongyang, and that ignorant man the will of heaven alone have a terrifying support for Lin Yi. Before he returned, this support would not be fully displayed, but now it is at the peak. Zhang Dongxing asked curiously, "Don't you want to seek revenge from the will of heaven?" Tiandan Pavilion and the will of heaven are actually two existences. Don't you understand this? Replying to Master Zhang, this subordinate certainly understands this, but revenge is revenge, and it also needs the right time. This subordinate will not be blinded by hatred and make some wrong judgments. Tong Woli showed some hatred on his face, but he immediately suppressed it. Zhang Dongxing nodded with satisfaction and said, "Not bad. It is very good that you can think this way. Continue. Now that we can't touch Tiandan Pavilion, what should we do?" "It's very simple. Take drastic measures." A trace of madness flashed in Tong Woli's eyes, and even Zhang Dongsheng and his brother did not notice it. This subordinate thinks that Tiandan Pavilion itself is not enough to be feared, and Lin Yi will not always stay in Middle Island. He will only come occasionally, so as long as we get rid of the supporters of Tiandan Pavilion, it will be fine. Are you saying that we should get rid of the acting island master position of Okuda Prefecture? It is not that we have not thought of this method, but it is not very useful. Zhang Dongsheng was a little disappointed. If Tong Woli only had this little knowledge, then he could not be called a wise man. Chapter 5800. Zhang Dongjue said faintly, "Tong Wulsuo, tell me your plan. Don't waste time." "Yes, Vice Head." Tong Wulsuo bowed slightly and continued, "We have to make a move on Okuda Prefecture, and the breakthrough point is his brother, Okudaba. I've received news that Okudaba has already formed a small fleet of treasure ships. We can think of a way to deal with this, and if he gets into trouble, our acting island master won't just stand by and watch." Zhang Dongxing's eyes brightened. Why hadn't he, Wu Miao, and Nantian Aurora thought of this before? Okudaba was indeed quite a character, but the problem wasn't killing him. It wasn't that difficult. If Okudaba was still that ancient warship, it wouldn't be easy to deal with him. But since he had formed a small fleet of treasure ships, there would be a lot more opportunities. Tong Wulsuo stretched out a finger, indicating that what he had just said was the first point. Then, he stretched out a second finger and said, "The matter of Okuda State can't be settled so quickly, so we have to take multiple measures at the same time. The second person to make a move is Ho Guanqi from the Dan Hall. With him being a hindrance here, it won't be easy for us to control the Dan Hall, and his support for the Heavenly Dan Hall is second only to the Okuda State." Zhang Dongjue's lips curled. Compared to destroying Tiandan Pavilion, he wanted to control the Elixir Hall more. Zhang Liju couldn't always appear at critical moments, and as long as he could completely control the Elixir Hall, he could slowly wear down Zhang Liju's influence. Tong Wulsuo's suggestion suited him very well. We can't deal with Ho Guanqi in the Middle Island. After all, the Elixir Hall has too much influence here, and it's almost impossible to succeed without a thorough plan. Same goes for Kai Zhongyang of Five Elements Commerce. Tong Wulsuo raised 3 fingers, indicating that these 3 were the most important. As for the will of heaven, Tong Wulsuo didn't mention it. He clearly thought that the will of heaven wasn't a concern, and it was unknown whether it was because of his desire for revenge or because he really thought so. Zhang Dongsheng nodded repeatedly. Although Tong Wumiao didn't tell him the details of his plan, it seemed like it was going in the right direction. It was clearly much better than the plan he had discussed with Wu Miao and Southern Aurora. Originally, it would not be easy to deal with these people, but this is an excellent opportunity. Tong Wulsuo smiled coldly and retracted his outstretched finger, showing his great confidence. "What do you mean?" Zhang Dongsheng was attracted by Tong Woli's words and could not help but ask. "The Extreme North Island auction." Tong Wulsuo clenched his fists tightly, producing crackling sounds. At the same time, he retracted his sinister smile and spoke in an affirmative tone. Zhang Dongjue interrupted, "Our Pill Hall will also be participating in the Extreme North Island's auction this time, so I will think of a way to send Ho Guanqi to the Extreme North Island. Five Elements Commerce's Kai Zhongyang shouldn't be absent. The two of them will definitely travel together. Tong Wulsuo, our most important goal now is to control the Pill Hall. So when you come up with a plan, you must prioritize this goal. Also, don't provoke Lin Yi for the time being. Put aside anything that might cause a conflict with Lin Yi first. At this moment, Zhang Dongjue still didn't know that Hou Guanqi had already decided to go to the extreme North Island. Otherwise, he would definitely laugh out loud and say that the heavens were on his side. He didn't even need to think of a way to achieve his goal. This was a good start. I understand. Don't worry, Vice Hall Master. Tong Wulsuo bowed respectfully and agreed. Then, he continued, Hou Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang are going to the extreme North Island together. This is the best time to make a move. According to the information I received, they will go on the Okuda Dam ship. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We must grasp it well. Zhang Dongsheng couldn't help but be slightly moved. He didn't expect that the three important figures in Tong Wulsuo's plan would gather together at once. It was indeed a heaven-sent opportunity. After leaving the island, it would be much easier to deal with the three of them. Once something happens to the Okuda Dam, the Okuda Prefecture would definitely not sit idly by. Zhang Dongjue and the others would take the opportunity to make things difficult for him. It wouldn't be a problem to kick him out of his position as the acting island master. This Tong Wulsuo really seemed to be a bit of a strategist. Zhang Dongjue smiled with satisfaction. If we want to deal with them on the ship, we must have our people follow them. Tong Wulsuo, do you want to follow them? How many helpers do you need? Of course, it's easier for me to control the situation if I follow them. If there are any small changes, I can adjust it at any time. As for helpers, I don't need too many. Otherwise, it will easily arouse their vigilance. Just 2 or 3 experts will be enough. Tong Wulsuo replied respectfully. At the same time, he showed enough confidence. Zhang Dongsheng clapped and laughed. Good, that's great. As long as this matter is completed, Tong Wulsuo, any reward you want is not a problem, especially in terms of medicinal pills. As long as you can find the herbs, I can refine them for you for free. Thank you, Grandmaster Zhang. This subordinate will not hesitate even if I have to sacrifice my life for you. Tong Wulsuo's face was full of gratitude, but he was very disdainful in his heart. It was good to refine pills for free, but to do such a big thing, he actually had to find the spiritual herbs to refine pills himself. It was really too stingy. Zhang Dongjue slapped his forehead and said, That's right, cousin. There is something I forgot to say. This time, among the people from our pill hall going to the extreme North Island, there is an important person. I heard that Tianqing's nephew is young and promising. He is a rare Qilin of our Jing family. Why don't we let him follow us this time? If there is a chance on the way, we can get our hands on that important person. Then, the day when the pill hall falls into our hands is really close. Oh, who is it that is so important? Zhang Dongsheng was slightly startled. His grandson, Zhang Tianqing, was only in his early 20s, but he was already in the early stage of nascent soul realm. He was indeed a good genius. Especially Zhang Tianqing's cultivation, he did not rely on too many medicinal pills. It could be said that it was quite rare. This time, he had just arrived at the middle island from the east continent. Zhang Dongjue had not even seen his face yet. How could he have his eyes on him? Zhang Dongjue smiled mysteriously and said in a low voice, Cousin, rest assured. Do you think I will harm Tianqing? If it wasn't for Tianqing, this disappointing person, I may not be willing to let Tianqing get involved. After that, without waiting for Zhang Dongsheng to ask, he directly leaned over and beckoned him to come closer. Chapter 5801. After hearing this name, Zhang Dongsheng's face was suddenly full of shock, which immediately turned into a huge surprise. He grabbed Zhang Dongjue's wrist and said, Is what you said true? Is she really going to follow us to the northern island? Zhang Dongjue chuckled and said, Naturally it is true, and you only know her identity on the surface. The other hidden identity is absolutely not known. There is a hidden identity? What is it? Zhang Dongsheng was slightly startled. Just the identity on the surface is enough to match up with his grandson Zhang Tianqing. What hidden identity is there? You don't need to know this for the time being. If the heavenly crystal is successful, I will definitely tell you in detail. But now is not the time, cousin. You just need to tell the heavenly crystal that he must go all out to do this. He will absolutely not suffer a loss. Zhang Dongjue waved his hand. He did not reveal the answer to Zhang Dongsheng's question. Zhang Dongsheng could only endure the unbearable itch in his heart. Since Zhang Dongjue did not say it now, then there must be a reason. Zhang Dongsheng will not force the other party to say it. Anyway, the identity of that person on the surface is enough to match up with his grandson Zhang Tianqing. The other hidden identity, for the time being, is really not important. Good. In that case, I will let the heavenly crystal go with us. Zhang Dongxing nodded, then turned to Tong Wulsuo and said, Wulsuo, I will ask you to take care of my grandson. Remember, the safety of him and that person is the most important. As for the rest of the plan, you can act according to the circumstances. It is better to let go than to invite trouble. Do you understand? This subordinate understands. Tong Wulsuo bowed his head and respectfully replied. But when he bowed his head, his eyes flashed a trace of disappointment. Zhang Dongxing was always overcautious. He always changed his mind. He really did not have any courage, this kind of person. If he wanted to have any big development, it was almost impossible. Well, you can leave first. Go and arrange the manpower and other matters. Under the premise of ensuring the safety of the heavenly crystal and that person, think of a way to complete the task with the least amount of movement and cost. Zhang Dongsheng solemnly ordered, then waved his hand to dismiss Tong Woli. Here, the itinerary for the northern island was set. The Tiandan Pavilion was almost finished. Hou Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang had to continue their preparations, so they left. Wei Shenjin stayed for a while, then left the Tiandan Pavilion. After waiting for everyone to leave, Lin Yi also left the Tiandan Pavilion and quickly flew towards the seaside. With his speed, he would soon arrive. The reason why he took advantage of the night to come to the seaside was not to find some romance, but to release Languza. If he suddenly appeared in the Tiandan Pavilion, it would not be easy to explain the origin of Languza. Moreover, Lin Yi needed Languza's identity as the overlord of the sea. This trip to the northern island, with Languza cruising in the nearby sea, it was estimated that it would be much smoother, so he did not hesitate to secretly put Languza in the sea, waiting for a chance encounter in the future. Then Languza could reasonably follow him. After coming out of the space of the jade pendant, Languza stretched his waist, making a crackling sound, then curiously looked around a few times and said, Boss, this is the heavenly island? There doesn't seem to be anything fun here. It's no different from the small Jianghu. Lin Yi faintly smiled and said, Languza, I have mentioned to you before that I will let you cruise in the surrounding sea and help me collect some inner dawn of sea beasts. Now, you have to act as a person to protect the treasure ship from a distance. When we reach the shore, you can find any excuse to meet me. Although Languza did not want to leave Lin Yi, since Lin Yi had made a decision, he would certainly not oppose it. He could only hope that there were enough sea beasts in this sea. In any case, he was also a member of the royal family of the Endless Sea. If he could show off here, it would be a very satisfying thing. Moreover, he would be protecting the surroundings, not far from Lin Yi, so there was no need to worry too much. Languza, your strength is indeed at the pinnacle in the immemorial underworld. However, there are countless people who are stronger than you on the heavenly stage island. Not only are they at the mountain opening stage, but there are also many at the earth opening stage and even the sea splitting stage, especially in the depths of the various seas. Even though you are a dragon in the sea, you must not be careless. Lin Yi said to Languza with a dignified expression. The mysterious ascension late stage was not weak, but compared to the real experts in the sea, it was still an ant. For example, the Five Evils dragon was thousands of times stronger than Languza, but he still hid in his nest and did not dare to come out. Of course, it was also because he was targeted by the vermilion bird. Otherwise, it should not be too big a problem for him to become the overlord of a region. Languza did not care and said with a smile, Boss, don't worry. I, Languza, have always been cautious in doing things. I will never do things that I am not sure of, but once I do it, I will definitely succeed. With my peerless talent, I will soon be able to improve my strength and become the real king of the sea. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Languza was cautious in doing things? This joke was not bad. However, His talent was indeed quite strong. It should not be too difficult for a mutated sea dragon to break through the mysterious ascension stage and enter the mountain opening stage. Chapter 5802. Under normal circumstances, the two could use the communication bead to contact each other. In order to prevent special situations, Lin Yi and Languza agreed not to use the communication bead at sea, and then let him leave Zhongdao. After returning to Tiandan Pavilion, Lin Yi began to refine the 6th and 7th grade elixirs. On the one hand, it was for Tiandan Pavilion to sell, and on the other hand, it was also to prepare for the auction. Of course, if he wanted to use elixirs to raise the funds to buy the spirit-gathering branch and the soul-nourishing wood, the 6th and 7th grade elixirs were probably not enough. Although the Thunder Xian pill was precious, if he wanted to buy treasures like the spirit-gathering branch and the soul-nourishing wood with it, it must be accumulated in quantity. Lin Yi did not want to refine all his Thunder Xian rattan into Thunder Xian pill and then exchange it for the spirit-gathering branch and the soul-nourishing wood. It was too wasteful. The best way, of course, was to refine the first-grade elixirs of the soul-nourishing wood. For example, the solid earth pill, which could be used by the earth opening stage, or the mountain-gazing pill, which was used to comprehend the breakthrough of the mysterious ascending stage to the mountain opening stage. It was a pity that although Lin Yi had the prescriptions of these two elixirs, he did not have the materials to refine them. The preciousness of these materials was indeed incomparable to the spirit-gathering branch and the soul-nourishing wood, but it was more precious and rare than the Thunder Xian rattan. After a night of refining elixirs, Lin Yi handed all the elixirs to Tian Chan. However, he heard that Shanghai Laner was picked up by Tian Chan last night. It seemed that there was something urgent. Originally, Shanghai Laner was going to say goodbye to Lin Yi, but she heard that he was refining elixirs in seclusion, so she did not disturb him. She directly followed Ramjia, who came to pick her up, back to the North Island. Hearing that the person who came was Ramjia, Lin Yi was not worried that Shanghai Laner would be in danger. In the whole North Island, except for Tian Chan, Ramjia was probably the last person who would hurt Shanghai Laner. He did not know what happened in the North Island that made Tian Chan take Lon Air back so urgently. Lin Yi thought that when he passed the North Island this time, he must go and have a look, but now he could only put it aside. If Tian Chan needed his help, Ramjia should wait for him to come out. Since he did not say anything, it meant that the matter was not urgent enough for Lin Yi to help. Seeing that there was no change in Han Jingjing, Lin Yi went out again and went to Alchemy Hall to look for Ho Guanqi. Ho Guanqi had taken the initiative to go to the auction in the far North Island, so he was also packing at the moment. He was a little surprised by Lin Yi's sudden visit. "Brother Lin, why do you suddenly come to me?" Ho Guanqi greeted him with a smile. If everything went well, they would be on the boat together tonight. Now that Lin Yi came, it must be for something. Lin Yi smiled and cupped his fists, saying, "Brother Ho, I took the liberty to visit you. Don't you welcome me?" "How could it be? You are a rare guest that I can't even invite. Come in and sit down." Ho Guanqi laughed and pulled Lin Yi in. After asking someone to serve spiritual tea, he asked, "Brother, you are not here just to chat with me, are you?" "Chatting is also one of my goals, but I still have something I need Brother Ho's help with." Lin Yi did not stand on ceremony and revealed his purpose with a smile. "It's like this. I came this time to ask Brother Ho if there are any mountain gazing stones in the Alchemy Hall. If there are, can you sell some to me?" Brother Lin wants to refine the mountain gazing pill? With your cultivation, you really should get ready. Ho Guanqi was slightly startled, but then he felt relieved. Lin Yi was already at the peak of the late stage of mysterious ascension. It was normal for him to prepare to comprehend the mountain gazing pill of the mountain opening stage in advance. The name mountain gazing stone sounded like a stone, but it was actually a type of spirit fruit. It was just that its appearance was very similar to a stone, so it had such a name. To be precise, it should be called mountain gazing fruit. However, this mountain gazing fruit was extremely rare, much more precious than the lightning Xian vine. Even the Alchemy Hall might not have it. Lin Yi was just asking with the mentality of trying it out. He didn't really expect to get the mountain gazing stone. Unexpectedly, Ho Guanxi nodded. If it's mountain gazing stones, the alchemy hall does have some in reserve. This thing was left behind by my master, and other than him, no one else would use it. There should be 2 left. Lin Yi was delighted. He didn't think that the alchemy hall would actually have mountain gazing stones. As expected of the pill god Zhang Liju's territory, there were many good things. As for 2 mountain gazing stones, that was definitely enough. Lin Yi knew that 1 stone was enough for him to refine 5 to 6 mountain gazing pills. As long as he could get one, he wouldn't have to worry about not having enough spirit jades for the future auctions. Brother Ho, I wonder if this mountain gazing stone of the alchemy hall can be transferred to me? How many spirit stones do you need? Just tell me. Lin Yi didn't hide his desire for the mountain gazing stone. If it were someone else, of course, he wouldn't speak like this. But since it was Ho Guanxi, it didn't matter. He wouldn't raise the price to Lin Yi no matter what. Ho Guanxi hesitated for a moment before saying with a bitter smile, Brother Lin, if it's my own, there's no harm in giving these 2 mountain gazing stones to you. However, you also know that this isn't mine. Instead, it's something that Master left in the pill hall as a reserve. If there's someone in our pill hall who can refine the mountain gazing pill, it's fine to use it. Lin Yi understood immediately. If he wanted to use the mountain gazing stone to refine the pill, he first had to become a disciple of the alchemy hall. As for how they used the resources and what they needed to trade, that wasn't important. He wasn't even a disciple of the alchemy hall, so it was impossible for him to get the mountain gazing stone. Seeing Lin Yi's disappointed look, Ho Guanxi gritted his teeth and said, Brother Lin, if you were to refine the mountain gazing pill, how confident are you? Lin Yi was slightly startled. Although he hadn't refined the mountain gazing pill before, it wasn't that the Shun-known cauldron hadn't refined a first-grade profound rank pill before. It shouldn't be too difficult to refine it. If it was only 1 furnace, the success rate couldn't be guaranteed. If it was 2 furnaces, the success rate wouldn't fluctuate much after the correction. Brother Ho, the mountain gazing pill is a first-grade profound rank pill. I think the success rate is more than 60%. Lin Yi casually said a conservative number. Then, his eyes lit up. Could it be that Brother Ho has a way for me to refine the mountain gazing pill? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.